League of Legends, The Lord of the Thousand Year War. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Damasia's Countermeasures. You mean, the Narxans defeated the Mombians by sneaking in and taking over the Nokmachi Plains? Weren't they fighting the northern barbarians in the Dama Plains? How could they have spare energy to raid and occupy Nokmachi? In the newly built city, the settlement center of Demacia, Jarvandark looked at the kneeling Damasian warriors in surprise. Yes, Patriarch. The Damasian warrior pointed to the Mombian soldiers who were being escorted by Damasian soldiers behind him. These defeated soldiers said it themselves. It shouldn't be false. Jarvandark looked at the Mombian soldiers. Tell me how you were defeated. Why didn't you send people to Demacia for help earlier? It's not like we don't support you. How could you be defeated by the Narxans? Released by the Damasian soldiers, the Mombian soldiers with hatred on their faces knelt down to the man who controlled the power center of Demacia. My lord chief, it was those cunning and hateful Narxans who fled into the city as refugees and deceived Chief Marushchev's trust. After the Narxans took control of the city gates, they equipped themselves with sophisticated weapons secretly transported into the city and raided us. Many of our soldiers were killed directly in the sneak attack by the despicable Narxans. The Narxans also beheaded Chief Marushchev and many centurions. We were unable to organize an effective resistance. They also used the traitor Elder Harold, who betrayed Mombia, to persuade the rest of the Mombia rebels to surrender. Only a dozen of us who ran faster escaped, and the others were killed by the brutal Narxans. My lord chief, please send troops to save Mombia. Staring at the Mombia warrior who was kowtowing in front of him, Jarvandark smiled and stepped forward to help him up, speaking gently. You have worked hard all the way. Go down and rest first. I need to discuss the matter of sending troops with other elders. After saying this, Jarvandark made a gesture, and the Demacia soldiers nodded and helped the Mombian soldiers to slowly leave. Chief Jarvan, is Demacia really going to send troops to help the Mombians retake the Nokmachi Plains? The staff who had been standing silently behind Jarvandark asked. If Nokmachi had not been lost, I would have sent troops. Unfortunately, it was the stupid Mombians who lost the Nokmachi Plains. Besides, Marushev has been killed, and the rest of the Mombians will be enslaved by Herald controlled by the Narxans. There is not much point in us sending troops. How can the Narxans be easy to deal with? We don't even understand where the Narxans who are fighting the northern barbarians got the troops to launch a surprise attack on Mombian. How can we send troops blindly? I'm afraid that even Demacia will be destroyed by the Narxans. That's good. I'm just afraid that the Patriarch will listen to the soldiers' request and choose to send troops to waste my Demacia's troops in vain. The respectable white-robed staff breathed a sigh of relief, but Jarvandark's face sank. However, we must guard against such despicable tactics as the Narxans have too many people. Bunalis, issue orders immediately to arrest and investigate all refugees who have come to Demacia in the past half-month and put them under unified custody and imprisonment. Only half a person's food quota is allocated to them every day, and they are asked to farm and mine until 3 completely reliable people can prove that the refugees are not Narxan spies. Otherwise, they will continue to work as spies, and those who disobey will be killed on the spot. Temporarily close the road from the Nokmachi Plain, and send more Damacian swordsmen to guard the main traffic arteries. Send out spies to find out the movements of the Narxans in the Nokmachi Plain. By the way, how is the mining of mithril in the Urus Mountains? Report to the Patriarch. After a year of secret mining, the mithril village in the Urus Mountains has stockpiled 4 kilograms of mithril, of which about 2 kilograms were consumed in the manufacture of equipment, and less than 2 kilograms of mithril has not been used, and is under the custody of the Hilda family. During the mining process, some miners were attacked by dragon birds, making mining difficult. I wonder if we should. That's not important. Don't mess with the dragon birds. The Kulsolar people said that the dragon birds are very vengeful. If people die, just send more prisoners to mine. Anyway, they won't live to leave the Zenith mine. What are the reserves of mithril equipment? 15 mithril swords, 20 mithril spears, and 10 sets of mithril iron armor. Tell the war blacksmiths to forge them quickly, and don't hold back. Also, the matter of mithril is of great importance, and no information must be leaked. If necessary, you can directly eliminate possible loopholes. Yes. Also, since the Narxons are coming with such a strong momentum, although it is a bit hasty, the soldiers should be equipped with mithril equipment. Well, announce to the outside world that these mithril equipment are made of special steel obtained by Damasia's unique refining method. Mithril melted steel can also be called Damasian steel. You will personally select the most powerful and loyal warriors, and equip them with Damasian steel equipment first to prevent the Narxons from attacking. Also, have all captains above the rank of squad leader report to me. I want to personally control this most powerful Damasia warrior. The sweet potatoes have been eaten, and the daughters are hungry again. Or rather, for the 2 daughters with huge appetites, those wild sweet potatoes are not enough to fill their teeth. But before they walked out of the quiet forest, everything that happened in front of them made Zeram's heart beat fast. He lay in the grass with a look of horror, letting the sharp grass leaves cut his skin, but the man did not dare to breathe. Outside the bushes, the Damasia soldiers wearing silver protective armor that had never been seen before raised the crossbows in their hands and pulled the trigger with a cold face. The crossbow arrow shot the lame old man who tried to run away on the spot. There were also 4 or 5 familiar faces whose hands and feet were tied with hemp ropes by the Damasia soldiers, like cattle and livestock, tied up and pulled by the soldiers in the direction of Damasia. Blake was captured, and the old cripple just died. He vaguely remembered that when he first came to Damasia, the Narxon refugee with a limp on his right leg gave him half of the bread he begged for, which helped him get through the most critical difficulties. After that, he and the other party reached a tacit understanding, often looking out for each other and introducing him to a job. However, the old cripple was inexplicably killed by the Damasia soldiers. Are the Damasians crazy? Why would they do this? Zeram didn't dare to bet that if he appeared in front of this group of terrible soldiers in such a miserable state, they would tie him up and take him away, or directly shoot him with a crossbow. The man who originally wanted to go to Damasia to find an acquaintance who took care of him to do some small work and successfully get some food had to give up his overly dangerous idea at this moment. Turning around and looking at the quiet forest behind him, Zeram hesitated for a moment and chose to return to the cabin. Hung, I really met a godlike editor this time. I didn't tell him anything. As soon as the recommendation for this week was finished, he immediately gave me 2 more without saying anything. I was so stupid. The 2 news messages were only 10 minutes apart. One was pushed by the client and the other was pushed by the website. Looking at the 2 messages, my eyes were straight, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't have any complaints about the 200 collections. I could only type silently and strive to write better. I will burst out more on the day when the book is put on the shelves. I will use good results to express my gratitude to the editor. Now I have a lot of manuscripts in stock. I'm considering the conditions for adding more chapters after the book is put on the shelves. Don't worry about Unix. According to the current progress, I have written 150,000 words in 2 AD. When I write about the more stories in 997 AD, plus various heroes and some events, I doubt that this book can be written directly until I'm buried and Riot goes bankrupt. It is true that Riot has compiled the story of League of Legends. I just don't know if I dare to open a big harem and become the harem king of Valor and despised by everyone. On the day of the book being put on the shelves, I want to fuck 10,000. Chapter 27 Emerald Collar. In the wooden house, 2 little girls who were only 5 years old had to sleep on a hard wooden board with hemp mats because they needed to save energy. When they heard the knock on the door and the familiar voice, the little girl's eyes lit up and she quickly ran down the bed to open the wooden door for her father. Dad, you are really fast this time. My sister and I are so hungry. What delicious food did Dad bring back this time? Zina, who ran the happiest, was the first to throw herself into Kiram's arms, but what she said made Kiram feel ashamed. He always knew that love cannot be eaten, but he had never had such a deep understanding. This understanding made him feel that he was a man with no use. If he couldn't even support his own daughter, what was the point of living? No wonder his wife ignored him after becoming a god. Zina, Dad, must have forgotten to get something before coming back, right Dad? Looking at Kiram's empty and somewhat at a loss hands, Miss Hap pulled away Zina who was holding her father. Looking at Miss Hap, the eldest daughter who seemed a little precocious, Kiram smiled with difficulty and touched the little head of the second daughter who was a little confused. Miss Hap is right. When Dad came back to get the sword, he wanted to tell Miss Hap and Hina not to leave the house. It's very dangerous outside. There are beasts that eat people. Dad will find food soon and come back. Miss Hap, you have to take good care of your sister. You two should be obedient. Okay. Okay. The black-haired little girl nodded obediently, while the blonde girl looked at Kiram who picked up the rusty dagger with a worried look on her face. Before this, the man had never used the dagger hanging on the wall. Dad, we are not hungry yet. You must pay attention to safety and don't be attacked by terrible beasts. The man turned his head slightly, hiding the wet corner of his left eye. The right half of his face was still sunny and great, full of confidence. Haha, I'm Kiram, the father of Miss Hap and Hina. How can those beasts be my opponents? Miss Hap, don't worry, Dad will definitely bring back delicious food. The wooden door closed again, and the confident look disappeared instantly. The father became Kiram again. I absolutely cannot go to the Silent Forest. There are real man-eating beasts in it. I'm definitely not their opponent. Thinking secretly, Zerum looked towards the east of the Silent Forest. That was the direction of the Naxos-occupied Naxos Plains. You can reach it by walking eastward along the periphery of the Silent Forest. No matter how cruel a person is, it is easier to get along with than an inhuman man-eating beast, right? I can't go to Demacia for the time being. The daughter's expectations of him made the man more painful than fear. After making a decision, the man walked towards the east timidly, muttering to himself, I must come back alive. The construction of the Radiant Wall has stopped. There is no need to build the wall now. The former Mombia tribal village has been renamed the Emerald Territory of Naxos. Lester is located in the former home of the village chief Marushchev, and the Emerald Territory meeting room is now holding a meeting. The clumps of cornstalks in the yard are particularly eye-catching. On the square table in the conference room was a map of the Emerald Territory that Meredith had drawn with the wizards. Those present included Margaret, captain of the Narxan Black Iron Guard, Morris, captain of the Narxan Shadow Crossbowmen, Meredith, the Black Rose Mage, and Harold, the surrenderist elder of Mombia. The Shadow Crossbowmen were a long-range unit that Lester had temporarily created after recruiting the captives from the North Nor village. They were equipped with short knives and crossbows. Later, Lester would personally teach the assassination techniques to make the Shadow Crossbowmen become real shadow assassins. In order to exchange these more than 30 crossbows with Nadars, Lester paid a huge price. Of course, these more than 30 people also became the key force to capture the Nokmachi plain. In Lester's view, such a result was a huge profit compared to the price to be paid. Of course, the most important thing was that the price was first paid by Ms. Rose, and letting the capable Meredith and the Black Rose Mages really intervene in the construction of the Emerald Territory was also an explanation from Lester to his doting wife. Families need to be maintained by each other, and no one party should give without asking for anything in return. Lester has always understood this. Above the relationship, there must be interests to maintain it, so that the relationship can last long. I agree with Lord Lester's idea. The Radiant Wall has lost the need to be built. If it is to be built, it should be built in the direction of Demacia. Margaret took the lead in expressing her opinion, supporting Lester as always. Now we should focus on development. Morris, you will be responsible for the reconnaissance and defense of Demacia. Although the possibility is not great, it is not impossible for the Demacians to send troops. Yes. After a cold word, Morris took a step back and said no more. Margaret, you will be responsible for the security issues in the territory. You must inform every citizen that Mombia has become a thing of the past. Now this place belongs to Naxos, and its name is Emerald Territory. Everyone is a part of Emerald Territory, and we must work hard to achieve unity and friendship. The security plan is what I discussed with you before. Whether it is the original Mombia people or the current Narxan people, whether it is farmers or soldiers, we will treat them equally. If there are any disputes, you can find Elder Harold to solve them. However, stealing, killing, fighting, and raping women are absolutely prohibited. Once there is conclusive evidence, the first time the thief and the initiator of the fight will have their left hands chopped off, and the second time they will be hanged directly. Those who kill and rape women will be beheaded after the public trial, and their bodies will be hung on wooden poles for crows to peck at, and they will not be buried. Yes. Harold's face became paler and paler as he listened. He began to tremble. He did not doubt whether the blonde girl in front of him would strictly enforce such a strict law. Lester turned his head and looked at Meredith. You are responsible for building the Emerald Territory according to my plan. In terms of food, give priority to the farmland and orchards in the north. This place is close to the water source, so there is no need to open up new fields for the time being. The farmland and orchards are large enough and there is enough food. Keep the uncultivated forest land and raise more livestock. The land on the east side with the mountain will become the Emerald Territory military camp. I will explain the specific construction process to you and Margaret in detail. Don't move it yet. The south side is close to the mountain and the mine, so you can build workshops, blacksmith shops, raw material warehouses, tailor shops or pickled food processing warehouses. The west side is a residential area. In the future, the Emerald Territory can expand westward, but this is not something I have considered in recent years. The inner ring should be reserved, and the inner city will be built in the future. If there are new refugees, you can use the method of open looseness and cover tightening to monitor them and actively win them over with gentle means. You can arrange suitable jobs for the refugees and distribute food on time. You can call it work for relief. The refugees with families can relax the surveillance appropriately and arrange for them to live in the temporary settlement in the west. The Emerald Territory is not afraid of too many people now, but it is afraid of not having enough people. What about me, Lord Lester? Harold felt cold in his heart after hearing the last part. He listened to so many things, but no tasks were assigned to himself. You. Lester smiled. You are responsible for cooperating with others, dispatching the people of the Emerald Territory, and coordinating disputes. As the policies were arranged one by one, the Emerald Territory, which was in a state of unrest, broke the silence and gradually became more lively. Soon, the people of Mombia found that under the rule of the Narxans, they seemed to live better than before. At least, they didn't have to repair the city walls and grow corn every day. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Coward, Man, Father. Before the sun had risen to its highest point, Zerum had reached the Nokmachi plain. Strange, why are there so many people? What are they busy with? Everywhere he looked, villagers were enthusiastically chopping down trees with axes, and carpenters were sawing wooden poles on the spot, and the villagers were carrying them to the west. When did a logging camp appear here? Soon, Zerum noticed that armored Narxan soldiers were guarding the villagers. Judging from the atmosphere between the two, it didn't seem like the relationship between an overseer and a slave. How could an overseer help a slave? Zerum was a little confused, but he didn't dare to act rashly. He only dared to lean over the bushes from a distance and carefully observe everyone. Soon, a pockmarked girl dressed in armor and dressed like a soldier stood on a high place, shaking her thick braids and opening her slightly rough voice. Everyone, work hard. It doesn't matter if you were Mombians or Dalmatians, or even refugees. From now on, you are all citizens of Emerald Territory. You are the people under the rule of Lord Lester. Lord Lester said, as long as you are willing to work hard, you can exchange for food and water. Those who want to settle in Emerald Territory can participate in the construction of wooden houses in the west area. Participants can get priority to obtain residence rights. There are only 100 places in the first phase. The number of places is limited. First come first served. Hearing the words of the little girl, the working crowd became more agitated and worked harder. Time was noon in a blink of an eye. Zerum, who was lying in the bushes, had chapped lips and was bitten by mosquitoes in several places, but he still couldn't make up his mind. It's time for lunch. Everyone put down your work first. Don't worry, line up. Everyone has a share. Carrying a large sack, A strong man followed the Narksan soldier to the lumber yard. The working people put down their work and lined up in front of the Narksan soldier. 1 piece of bread and half a pickled fish per person. If you want water, you can go to the river to get it yourself. There is a clay pot here. If the bread and half a pickled fish were bearable, Ziram could no longer bear it when he heard the Narksan soldier mention water. If the Narksans didn't have crossbows, maybe he could run away. Thinking about this, Ziram got up from the ground and was about to touch the dagger to go over, but after hesitating, he threw it into the bushes. While walking slowly towards the crowd, he was also ready to escape at any time. There's someone over there. I see. Hey. There's someone over there. Ziram froze in place and turned sideways when he heard the Narksan soldier calling him. Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. Following the strategy of dealing with refugees, the Narksan soldier took out a wheat bread from the sack and looked at Ziram, who looked like a beggar. Do you want something to eat? If it's your first time, just register. Register? Ziram was a little confused. It means recording your name and information on a parchment scroll so that you will become a citizen of the Emerald Territory. Not only will you be protected by the laws of the Emerald Territory, but you will also be able to get food and shelter by working. These are all policies issued by Lord Lester, and they cannot be faked. Seeing that the Narksan soldiers did not chop off his head with weapons, Ziram moved slowly over with doubt. Such behavior instead caused dissatisfaction among others. Hey, you guy. Are you a rat? Why are you so hesitant? No one here can eat you. What are you afraid of? Yes. Everyone knows that fighting and killing in the Emerald Territory under the rule of Lord Lester will cost you your head. Don't waste everyone's time. Everyone is still waiting to get food and eat. If you don't build a house, you will live one day later. There is no time to waste. Don't be afraid. I was a refugee like you before. Lord Lester of the Emerald Territory is very good. As long as you don't break the law, no one will hurt you. Hearing what everyone said, Ziram's vigilance was restrained a lot. He didn't believe the words of the Narksan soldiers, but he was willing to believe the words of refugees like himself. What's your name? Ram. Ram, right? Are you alone? Do you have any family? Just me. I see that you are hesitant and don't seem to be telling the truth. Let me make it clear to you in advance. If you are found to be lying, you will be arrested and executed as a spy. I really don't think it is necessary to hide your family, because in the Emerald Territory, as long as you don't break the law, you will not be harmed. Having a family can also help you integrate into the Emerald Territory faster. Looking at the particularly serious look of the Narksans, the trembling Ram thought about it and decided to tell the truth. In fact, I have 2 daughters. They rely on me to survive. If I die, they will definitely die. That's why I hid them. I don't trust you. I don't know what you will do to my daughters. That's why I can't tell you where they are. Please don't hurt me. I beg you. I have to go back to take care of my daughters. Kiram knelt down on the ground in fear and kowtowed to the Narksan soldiers, which made everyone stunned. Originally, it was thought that this was a cowardly and timid beggar and refugee. However, this was not the case. This was a great father who was willing to give up all his dignity for his daughters. The contempt and ridicule in their eyes gradually disappeared, and there was more respect and shame in everyone's eyes. This is a father, the respect that a real man deserves. No one would laugh at a father who is willing to kneel down for his daughter, unless he is not a man, or an out-and-out beast. Get up quickly. No one here can hurt you. I promise that I will be the first to not forgive anyone who hurts you and your daughter. Brother, my name is Mota. If you have any trouble in the future, come to me directly. Okay, I know everyone is a good person. Don't be too enthusiastic and scare this man. The Narksan soldier personally helped Ziram up with both hands. The sincere respect on his face made Ziram stunned. This was a look he had never seen in Demacia and Bombia, but now he saw it in the Emerald Territory. The people here understood what he had paid for his daughter, and did not laugh at him. They recognized him. Ziram suddenly felt very wronged, and his nose was a little sour, but he held it back. The hard life had long told him that tears are the most precious thing in the world, and the most worthless thing. Precious in his own eyes, worthless in the eyes of others. The 2 people who thought their tears were valuable had already passed away. I don't know who you are, but you are a great father, I can see that. The Narcan soldier said in a deep voice. How about this? I'll ask my superiors for an exception and use my own head to guarantee that you are not a spy, nor are you here to cheat for food. In the record, I'll first write that you have 2 daughters, and I won't fill in their names or other information for now. You can live in Emerald Territory for a few days. You can collect an extra double portion of food here to bring back for your daughters. This will give you enough time to understand whether Emerald Territory is suitable for you to live in, and you won't have to run around for your daughter's livelihood. A week is enough time for you to consider whether you want to settle down here with your daughters. Looking at the stunned man in front of him, the Narcan soldier handed the registration scroll and quill pen to the tall man and gave Zeram a warm hug. Welcome to Emerald Territory, my friend Zeram. Woo woo wow wow wow. Thanks to the 2 readers, Icarus70 and Bookfriend 2020207222646442 for their monthly ticket support. Then, can I ask for a vote? Chapter 29 Territory Construction. Starting from this boundary line, the first phase will be to surround it with simple wooden spike fences. The scale of the military camp will be built with 1,000 people, and it can be expanded outward in the future. I roughly estimated that, if other plots of land in the Emerald Territory are not taken into account, the land on the east side is enough to build a fortress that can accommodate 5,000 people. After the city wall is built in the later stage, the enemy will not have any chance of taking over the Emerald Territory without 5 times the number of elite troops. Here, there can be enough military training grounds and residences. After digging up the mountain of the Shimmering Silver Mountains, it can be further expanded, and war beast fences or prisons can be built against the mountain. By the way, Meredith, are there any special beasts in the Shimmering Silver Mountains or the Eurus Mountains? In the eastern district of the Emerald Territory, with the service of Sisters Taylor and Gis, Lester discussed the construction of the military camp fortress with Meredith and Margaret. The Eurus Mountains stretch for thousands of kilometers. From now on, all numbers will be counted in kilometers, from the west coast of the Conqueror Sea in the west to the Dammer Plain west of the Immortal Fortress in the east. The peaks are covered with snow year after year. Dragon birds build nests on white stones, and there are also 2-legged flying dragons wandering on the top of the snowy peaks. They kill anyone they meet, and are extremely bloodthirsty and warlike. If there is anything special, only dragon birds, snow eagles, 2-legged flying dragons and snow yaks are special in the Eurus Mountains. The others are some regular animals such as snow wolves, snow foxes, snow rabbits, and mountain antelopes. Hunters often go up the mountain to hunt for fur and meat. As for the Shimmering Silver Mountains in the south, there are dense forests and abundant small animals. It is said that there are swamps and poisonous gases deep in the dense forests of the mountains. There are giant stone-armored lizards and dragon lizards living in the swamps. There are many poisonous insects and beasts. I don't know about the others. Even the Black Rose has no definite news, Lester said casually, while digesting the precious information from Meredith. Perhaps in the future we can explore ways to tame lizards and dragon birds. If we succeed in taming these 2 beasts, they will be effective as special military branches on the battlefield. You can keep an eye out for talented people in taming beasts and use special methods when necessary. Yes, Lord Lester. Okay. Seeing that the 2 women agreed, Lester continued to make plans. Priority should be given to building military quarters. Men on the left and women on the right. They must be separated. Space for sewage canals must be reserved, so that soldiers can solve excretion problems in the barracks. A rough framework should be built for the training ground. Archery ranges and weapons training grounds are essential. A stove can be built there first, so that soldiers who can cook can easily handle food and get water to make fire. Whether it was Meredith or Margaret, they were concentrating on remembering what Lester said, not daring to miss a single word. However, the 2 barbarian sisters, Taylor and Jessie, who seemed to be doing nothing behind Lester, were a little confused. They didn't understand the arrangements made by Lester, nor did they understand the meaning of their being here. They didn't dare to go up to Lester to massage his shoulders and legs, for fear of disturbing the adults' discussion of business. So, why did the 2 of them come here? The 2 sisters doubted their lives. Compared with others, they seemed useless. Interpreting the doubt in her sister's eyes, the younger sister nodded firmly. When the time is right, we can build an arena here to earn the reputation and wealth of the Emerald Territory and also give death row prisoners more ways to die. The current harsh laws are only because the territory has just begun to be built. When there are more talents and time in the future, the laws will be more complete and relaxed than now. Whether they are dead or alive, they must be allowed to pay their due value. Amphitheater? Lord Lester, what is that place? Margaret was a little confused. Meredith explained. A place where people fight each other. People fight beasts, with spectators in the stands above, and slaves and prisoners below. The winner can get cheers and admiration from the spectators, while the loser becomes a corpse with nothing. So it seems that such a place is very characteristic of adults. Do you want to use the prisoners who have won consecutive victories to hone the warriors? Lester smiled at the comfortable squinting girl, touching Margaret's head. This is just one aspect. I want to use the prisoners who have won consecutive victories in the arena to build the most terrifying army, an army that will scare the enemy. I want to join. Lord Lester, please allow me to join. Margaret looked at Lester with shining eyes and asked to join the team. No, why not? Lord Lester, I want to be your sharpest sword. Looking at the anxious girl in front of him, Lester pinched the girl's rough face lovingly. Because the sharpest sword is the easiest to break, you have to be my general, not a sword that is easily broken. Rarely, although Lester refused her request to join the team, the girl was even happier, grinning alone, which reminded Lester of the silly golden retriever. Usually, this cold girl has such a contrasting cute side. Lord Lester, according to what you said, this unit should be quite special, or the casualty rate is very high, right? Thinking about Lester's words, Meredith gave her own guess. Yes, although this unit is powerful, there will be few survivors after a battle, which is why I will not allow Margaret to join. Hearing Lord Lester's fair and square partiality again, Margaret was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. Brother, what is the name of this unit? Seeing that the two girls didn't want to speak, the more lively and outgoing GC finally found the opportunity to speak as a barbarian girl. For the time being, let's call this unit the Bloodthirsty Executioner. How about it, GC? Do you want to come? I can give you priority to join the team. The girl's cheerful expression was stuck in an instant, and she slowly transitioned from a smile to a stiff face, and then her face turned pale. At this moment, she couldn't tell whether it was a joke or a serious decision. GC's sister Tally was even more pale. Margaret and Meredith, who were no longer smiling foolishly, looked at the two girls with weird expressions at the same time, making the two girls almost cry. Tally even began to choke with grievance. Haha, I'm just teasing you, two little fools. Lester's voice fell, and the almost suffocating atmosphere eased instantly. Giving the two sobbing girls a warm hug, Lester whispered with a smirk. Find a teacher, Ms. Meredith or Captain Margaret. Even my sister can't do nothing every day. Do you want to be a mage or a warrior? Choose for yourself. Chapter 30 Getting on track. It was getting late, and the sun was about to set. Gurgle sister, I'm so hungry. Hina opened her eyes and sat up from the bed, holding her drumming belly, only to find that her sister had already been lying on the ground, face down, with her nose flattened. Ah, sister. Hina rolled over from the bed, helped Miss Hap, who was about to faint from hunger, and shook her vigorously. Don't die, sister. Woo, sister, wake up. Miss Ha's eyeballs moved with difficulty, and with a red mark on her forehead, she opened her mouth. Don't shake anymore. I am not dead yet. Hina, Miss Hap, Dad, I'm back. Open the door quickly. The familiar voice of a man came from outside the door, making the two little girls jump up from the ground. Miss Hap pushed her sister away and took the lead in opening the bolt, staring at the sack behind Karam. Then her eyes lit up, and a pure smile appeared on her face. Zina, Miss Hap, have you been obedient and stayed in the house? Ziram rarely showed his authority as a father, but he couldn't hide the smile on his face. Because he was holding a jar, he couldn't put his hands on his hips, and his authority was not dignified. Before the two little girls could respond to their father's question, the man happily closed the door, put down the earthen jar of water, and ordered, Dad will make you delicious food now. Be careful not to hit the jar. I know. Asterisk 2. The two little girls knelt on the mud ground in a good babysitting posture, looking at the tattered clothes of the good girls, and recalling the linen clothes worn by those enthusiastic friends in the morning. The man's nose was a little sour. Today, Dad got 2 loaves of bread and a fish, enough for you two little ones to eat, and Dad can get food back tomorrow. Wow. Dad is so awesome. Seeing Zina cheering and kissing Zirum's dirty cheek, Miss Ha hesitated for a moment, and followed and kissed the other side. Looking at the admiring eyes of his daughters, Kiram, with his eyes a little sore and swollen, felt that his injustice was not in vain, and it was worth it, no matter how much suffering he had to endure. As long as his 2 daughters could live a good life, it didn't matter if he worked like a cow or a horse. Moreover, if he lived in the Emerald Territory, he might not have to work like a cow or a horse. Actually, it's not that Dad is great, but that Dad met a really good person. He lit the hemp grass with a flint, and the branches in the round stone quickly burned. Then he placed the clay pot between the 3 round stones. As long as he waited for the water to boil, and put the pickled fish in, he could have a perfect hot meal. Good people. Are they good people from Demacia? I remember Dad said that Dad also got his food from good people in Demacia. Cinna opened her eyes wide and looked at her father, who seemed to have changed. Thinking back to the Demacian soldiers who killed the old cripple in the morning, Kiram shook his head sadly. The people of Demacia are not good people. Dad was wrong before. Then where did Dad get so much food this time? Miss Ha asked, following her sister's words. She was also very curious. Before, it was just a small piece of black bread, but today it was 2 pieces of black bread and a fish. The difference was too big. There was one thing she didn't say. She suspected that the food was stolen by her father. The people of Emerald Territory gave it to Dad. Dad helped the people of Emerald Territory to build houses. They gave Dad food and asked Dad to bring food back to you 2 little guys. It was equivalent to Dad doing the work of 1 person and getting the food share of 3 people. They are all good people. Emerald Territory? What is that? Is it a gem? Zirum was stunned, looking at the innocent Cinna, and nodded subconsciously. Yes, Emerald Territory is a green gem. It is the hope of Dad, Miss Ha, and Cinna. Miss Ha heard something else. Then, Dad, who is the owner of this gem in Emerald Territory? The owner of Emerald Territory? Thinking back to everything he had experienced during the day, because he was too focused on food and investigating the Emerald Territory, Zirum found that he had actually forgotten the name of the owner of Emerald Territory mentioned by Narxons and others. The man scratched his messy head in distress and suddenly felt a little embarrassed. It was too unkind to take advantage of someone, but not remember their name. Haha, they didn't say it. Dad will ask Miss Ha tomorrow and then tell her. Okay. Okay, Zina also wants to know. Okay, Zina will know, knowing that his precocious eldest daughter had been thinking about the owner of Emerald Territory. Zirum kept this in mind. Haha, the soup is hot and the fish is boiled. Don't be too anxious, otherwise you will burn your mouth. Eat bread and drink soup at the same time, and wait for it to cool down. Looking at his 2 daughters with smiles and satisfaction on their faces, Zirum's face was also full of pride. Go early tomorrow. Maybe you can come back early. The Emerald Territory has undergone earth-shaking changes under the new policy. Whether it is Demacians or Mombians, whether it is refugees or victims, their faces have a little more longing for life. Putting aside their previous identities, they began to try to regard themselves as citizens of the Emerald Territory. The premise of ambition is to have room for advancement. The fact is that as long as life can get better and better, no one will show their laziness unless they have lost most of their room for advancement. The farmland and orchards in the north are well managed by the people of the territory. Counting the game in the northern mountains, the food output is enough to feed more than 1,000 people. Now the population of the Emerald Territory is less than 600. Under Lester's unified distribution order, most people can live a good life with enough food. Rows of wooden houses in the West District are neatly lined up, and the military camp has a rough framework. The Black Iron Guards and Shadow Crossbowmen have already moved in, put down their weapons, and built their future homes under the guidance of the construction stonemasons. There are also many more workshops in the south. With the priority of construction, 2 more blacksmith shops and crossbow workshops have been built. Under the constraints of qualified craftsmen, the weapons workshop has now reached the limit of what the Emerald Territory can bear. Regarding the equipment forging, Lester appointed an old blacksmith named Hillistel. Under the integration of the old blacksmith, more than a dozen blacksmiths formed a war workshop and began to study the casting skills. The blacksmiths also led dozens of young apprentices who were willing to learn the casting skills, let the apprentices start their iron smelting career, and taught the blacksmith apprentices to try to practice casting some simple farm tools. Near the foot of the Shine Silver Mountains, Lester sent people to take over the mines left by the Mombia people. Copper, iron and tin mines were found in the mines. Most importantly, there were a lot of silver mines deep in the mining area further south of the mines. Such a result made Lester sigh that the Emerald Territory was indeed a Feng Shui treasure land, but he didn't know why it would become barren in the future. Everything was developing rapidly. A pregnant woman gave birth to a new life, and Emerald Territory showed a unique vitality and atmosphere, which made the residents of Emerald Territory feel more belonging to this beautiful and rich land. And naturally they also had a deep gratitude and respect for Lester who brought all this. Lester opened his eyes from the empty bed and decided to give himself a day off. Some readers have made some suggestions. Hangai will try her best to grasp the rhythm and reduce the awkward moments. Everyone should be patient. The main storyline in the early stage is still the protagonist building the base camp, Emerald Territory. Among them, Emerald Territory will slowly introduce the customs and heroes of Naxos and Demacia as the plot hub. Later, it will be extended to Freljord, Zorn and Ionia in the chronology of the background story in the Dino War or the expansion of Naxos. After all, this is not a system text. I have to write according to the timeline, and can't write whatever I want. You don't have to worry about not seeing familiar heroes. Even if it was 1,000 years ago, there were a lot of heroes to write about, such as Kled, Poppy, Angel Sisters, Evelyn, Ritz, Vladimir, Tam and Fizz. On the contrary, I'm a little worried about how to arrange a bunch of heroes that suddenly appeared. There is a lot of information to read, and telling the story slowly is more suitable for me. Thanks to the book friend, What's Wrong with Changing the Name, for the reward of coins, and thanks to the book friend, Fallen Sin Angel, for the monthly ticket support. If you like it, please vote for it. Chapter 31 War Workshop. Lester lived in the center of Emerald Territory. According to the early planning, an inner city would be built in this area. What Lester did not tell others was that he wanted to build a college in the inner city. Brother, breakfast is ready. Do you want me to bring it to you? GC's voice came from outside the door. Lester calmed his breath and ended his practice. With a click, a small hole appeared on the oak floor under the right foot. The man was a little stunned. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he always felt that something was wrong with his body, as if he had grown too fast. Just yesterday, he accidentally crushed a wooden bowl in a state of distraction, which was impossible in the past. You know, even an axe can hardly split a wooden bowl that has been roasted and soaked in oil, but he crushed it with 5 fingers. It was really incredible, but considering that this is a world with magic and mysterious power, it makes sense. No, I'll go downstairs to eat. Let Tally help me take a bath. Okay, Brother Lester. Pulling his bare smooth right foot out of the hole in the floor, Lester looked at the skin that was intact under the scratches of the wood thorns and raised his eyebrows. It seems that it's time to teach the 13 bodybuilding exercises to Margaret and the others. Maybe this set of exercises really works wonders in this magical world. Wearing simple clothes, he drew a bucket of water from the deep well in the yard. With the help of Tally, he took a refreshing cold shower and did simple but effective warm-up exercises. Everywhere he looked was a vibrant green. The refreshing morning breeze brushed past him, taking away the last trace of tiredness. The unknown blue-feathered bird perched high on the branch, shaking its little head, curiously watching the stupid bipedal creatures overlapping under the tree and making rhythmic crisp sounds with the bipedal creatures. Soon, other companions were called over by the blue-feathered bird and became the performers who sang the praises of the beauty of life. Inside the wooden window, GC withdrew her gaze and felt her cheeks burning. Looking at the food that had already begun to cool, she secretly wondered whether she should heat it up again. Breakfast was pinkberry fern salad from the Nokmachi Plain and rabbit meat sandwiched in bread. For the tribesmen whose sugar making technology was not yet mature, they still had to eat ready-made fruits and beets to obtain sugar. Although Lester thought that such a breakfast was very crude, because of his experience in his previous life, he did not have any requirements in the pursuit of food. As long as it was not poisonous, it was good. However, it was not a solution to keep eating ancient and natural food like this. The man decided to try to find some alternative spices and train a few good chefs in the future. After watching her sister, whose breath was unstable, go back to her room to rest, GC packed up the clay dinner plate and came to the owner of the Emerald Territory. "Brother, what are your plans for today?" No longer thinking about food, Lester touched GC's head, making the girl's ears red. Tally said that Meredith gave her a day off. "What about you? Aren't you going to Margaret to practice swordsmanship today?" The girl shook her head. Sister Margaret said that we can go there this afternoon. She has to arrange the construction of the military camp in the morning. "Is that so?" Lester stood up and smiled. "Then you can hang out with me this morning. How about that?" "Okay." South District, War Workshop. Baskets of burnt charcoal were sent into the blazing furnace, and the blower blew out gusts of wind during the mechanical movement of the blacksmith apprentice. After 3 days and nights of burning, other impurities were filtered out, and the molten low-carbon wrought iron was poured into the clay mold from the outlet of the furnace. After cooling, the muscular sturdy old man smashed the mold with a hammer. After pushing aside the rotten mud, a wrought iron ingot appeared in front of the apprentices, and the old man used a large iron pliers to steadily move it to the anvil. This is just the first step in forging a weapon. Remember, the key to forging is to use steady force, coherent movements, and even landing points. Put the soft wrought iron ingot on the charcoal covered stove to roast it red and white so that the wrought iron can fully absorb the hard element in the refined charcoal. The old man put the wrought iron ingot back on the anvil and began to beat it rhythmically with a big hammer to flatten the ingot. When it was forged to a thickness of less than 1 centimeter, the old man used the other side of the sledgehammer to hammer hard along the center line of the spread iron ingot. After the white line appeared, he used iron tongs to heat it in the furnace again, folded it along the center line with a hammer, and forged it repeatedly. After 13 times, the soft wrought iron ingot became a steel ingot after thousands of hammerings. From the time the sun did not rise, a whole morning had passed. Then, the old man began to forge the steel ingot, and the rough blank of the steel sword began to take shape gradually, with the sword edge, sword spine, sword tip, and sword guard appearing in sequence. Under the admiring gaze of the blacksmith apprentice, the rough and ugly rough blank began to become smooth and round. After repeating it several times, the blade was also hammered out with 4 perfect bevels, and the excess impurities were hammered away. The sword body began to emit the unique silver light of an iron sword. After burning for a while, the old man clamped the forged nux and steel sword with a large iron pliers, and completed the quenching in the added tung oil. The next step is to sharpen the sword edge, and install the wooden hilt. The sun began to set, and the sweaty girl came out of the war workshop. Lester frowned rarely. Due to work needs, I didn't come into contact with professionals such as knife makers in my previous life, and I didn't understand many professional theories. It seems that it is not realistic to improve the forging technology by myself. This matter needs to be considered in the long run. It is better to let professional local blacksmiths study it. Valoran's iron forging technology is not necessarily worse than that of the present world. Is it too hot now? It's a little bit. I'll pick you a fruit to eat later. Let's go and take a look at the residential area. GC was a little confused. Don't you want to go to the military camp? Lester waved his hand. It's getting late, and I personally made the decision on the military camp plan. Margaret and Meredith already know how to do it. I haven't been to the residential area yet, so I should go and take a look. The two of them talked as they walked northwest on the gravel road. Because the laws were too strict, the public security in the Emerald Territory was surprisingly good in the absence of corrupt element. There were children squatting by the pits on the road playing, and there were narcs and black iron guards standing guard every few dozen meters. After walking for more than 2 hours, the two heard the crisp sound of the river hitting the stubborn stones. Just go further north. Strictly speaking, this small river is the 4th branch of the Black Iron River. When I was in the Mostek tribe, my grandfather told me that there is a huge city called the Immortal Fortress in the rich south, and there is also a long river that irrigates the fertile land in the south. Brother Lester, does the Black Iron River flow out of the Immortal Fortress? The Black Iron River is an inland river that flows from the Sea of Watchers to the mainland through the Immortal Fortress. It just passes through the underground waterway of the Immortal Fortress. It can't be said that the Black Iron River comes from the Immortal Fortress. Oh, I haven't seen the sea yet. Brother Lester, have you seen the Sea of Watchers? Facing the girl's expectant gaze, Lester naturally would not say that he hadn't seen it. Of course, the sea is a great existence worthy of all from life. There are always endless waves on the ocean. The waves roll in the wind and rain. Small boats can't sail on the sea at all. Only big ships can sail on the sea. When the two were about to arrive at the West District, in a newly built cabin, the blonde girl carefully looked outside the house through the window and carefully pulled the bolt, but was stopped by the black-haired girl with her hands on her hips the next moment. Sister, what are you doing? Thank you to readers, Shenyu Kinglan, and ZHU Chop Sauce, for your monthly ticket support, and thank you to all the great readers for your recommendation votes. Your support is the greatest motivation for Han Guy to move forward. Chapter 30 To the first meeting between the devil and the angel. Sister, where are you going? Pushing aside her sister who was blocking her way, the blonde girl whispered. Shh, Hina, keep your voice down. Just stay in the room. I'll go outside to take a look. No. Daddy said we can't leave the house when he's not home. She stood stubbornly in front of the door and fiddled with it twice, but Hina still refused to give way. Sister, you have to listen to daddy and don't run around. Hina, I'm not running around. Miss Ha saw that her sister was always blocking her, and she also got a little angry and glared at her sister. Don't you understand? This place is different from other places. Otherwise, Dad wouldn't have brought us here. Hina, do you understand? And Dad also said that Lord Lester, the master of Emerald Territory, has made harsh laws. All the Avildoers will be punished accordingly. The Avildoers are hung on wooden poles. We are safe here. We don't have to be as careful as in the forest before. I just saw some children playing outside. They can do it, so why can't we? But, Dad said, he said. Hina, listen to your sister. Miss Ha held her sister's shoulders with both hands and was very serious. What Dad said is not alright. We have to have our own ideas. Dad has suffered a lot for us. We can't always rely on Dad. We have to learn to grow up and learn to make our own choices. Finally, she pushed her sister who had been shaken away and opened the wooden door, just like a baby bird opening a cage. I'm going to go out and take a look. You stay at home and lock the door. Hina looked at her sister's back with some grievances. After hesitating for a moment, she closed the door and quickly followed. I'll go too. The two little guys who left home for the first time to explore quickly forgot the unpleasantness just now. Hina, who disobeyed her father's order for the first time, was also immersed in the novelty of the adventure. Surrounding them were neatly arranged exquisite oak houses that were much better than the dilapidated houses before. At the end of the wooden house, there was a soldier in black clothes with a crossbow on his back silently guarding the law and order. Looking at the man in black in the distance, Miss Ha couldn't help but recall that just 3 days ago, a strange man who wanted to break into her house and cause trouble for her and her sister was knocked to the ground by the uncle in black and then was escorted to an unknown place. According to the laws of the Emerald Territory, he should have been hanged, right? No longer thinking about these terrible things, the little girl took her sister and walked slowly along both sides of the road. The tall trees swayed slowly in the breeze, and a leaf fell from the sky and was accurately held in Miss Ha's palm. Staring at the green leaf that grew like a cloud in the palm of her hand, Miss Ha curiously put it to her nose and sniffed it. A strange fragrance came to her face, and the girl squinted her eyes. What a nice smell. What kind of tree is this? The black-haired little girl was also curious. Sister, I don't know either. You know nothing. Zina is a fool. Haha. Sister, you don't know either? Sister is the big fool. Haha, don't you tickle me. I surrender. Watch this. Hehe. Sister, you are playing tricks. Throwing down the leaves, the two little girls laughed and played together. This is a unique camphor tree in the Nokmachi plain. Adult trees can grow to more than 10 meters. The trunk is straight and thick. The wood has a refreshing fragrance. It can be used to make furniture. It's a pity to cut it down when it grows so tall, so it's not cut down. It's just right for cooling off in summer. Startled by the voice coming from the side, Miss Ha vigilantly pulls in a back 2 steps, staring closely at the man who appeared in front of her. Sister, this big brother is so handsome, just like those uncles on the high mountain that emits light. Zinna, who was pulled by Miss Ha, was stunned. What a good kid with good vision. These are pink berries picked by my brother. They are very sweet. Lester took out a few fresh pink berries from his pocket and stuffed them into the hands of the black-haired little girl who praised him. He turned to GC who was following behind him and said, "This is the answer to the question you asked me just now. In the absence of a good moral value, only strict and reasonable rules can restrain people's behavior. This is the meaning of the existence of laws. Moral norms can make people become good people, but laws are different. Laws prevent people from becoming evil people. As for bad people, there is still the possibility of correction. There is no need to kill them all. It is best to send them to mining." Seeing that Tally seemed to understand, Lester continued. In Emerald Territory, such a young girl can walk on the road without worrying about being snatched away. This is the power of rules, because the goal of my making rules is to allow people in Emerald Territory to walk on the road without worrying about themselves or their personal belongings being violated. Seeing that the vigilance on the face of the blonde girl had disappeared a lot, Lester took out 2 pink berries from his pocket and stuffed them into the blonde girl. He smiled softly at the too cute, but a little too sloppy little girls, and walked towards the position of the shadow crossbowman soldiers with GC. Sister, the pink berries are so sweet. Zinna tasted the pink berries in her hand in small bites, and felt a little reluctant to see the fruit getting less and less. The pink berries given by the handsome big brother are so delicious. If they are eaten like this, will they be gone? Miss Ha stared at the man's back. Her vigilant body gradually relaxed, and she gently bit a pink berry. So sweet. Not knowing that his unintentional behavior had been remembered by the 2 precocious little girls, Lester nodded to the shadow crossbowman who saluted him and spoke. "I remember your name is Frisson." Frisson's lifeless heart was rarely touched. "I didn't expect you to remember my name. I remember everyone's name." Just like chatting about family matters, Lester did not show any sympathy or pity in front of Frisson. He knew that the cold-faced man in front of him did not need anyone's sympathy. What Frisson needed, what the surviving captives in Bina village needed, was the blood of the enemy, the blood of all the bandits in the Headless Bandit group. "I know that you chose to walk out of the warehouse and choose to follow me just to get a chance for revenge, but this is not enough for me. Far from enough." Frisson stared at the greedy man in front of him with a dead look, and after a long time, he said in a hoarse voice, "We have nothing left. What else do you want? Our souls? Are you really like what they say, a demon who can plunder lives and souls?" Listening to the conversation between the 2 men in front of her, the girl trembled with fear. In this world, the ones who plunder the most lives and souls are not necessarily demons. Lester turned his head, looked at the blue sky, and said lightly, "I don't need your souls either. I need your loyalty, eternal loyalty." "I don't understand. Is a loyalty to you not loyalty?" "It doesn't matter. Soon, you will understand." Watching the man named Lester go away, a warm breeze blew by, but Friesen shuddered. "Perhaps, real demons are not as evil as you." Thanks to the reader, Jinfeng, for the reward. Thanks to, guess how long it took me to come up with a name, and, bookfriend 2020101823281818 for the monthly ticket support. With everyone's support, the collection of this book has exceeded 500, which is gratifying. Congratulations. Chapter 33 The Yodel Following the General. Lester was not trying to intimidate the poor survivor of Bina village. He just wanted to manage and build his own power in his own way. He at least had to make sure that the sword he had built would not be used by others to stab him. In the previous life, the killers under the organization were loyal to the organization. It was not that the organization paid any material to buy people's hearts, but brainwashed them from childhood, coerced them with weaknesses, cultivated their emotions, and treated the killers as family members with meticulous care. Then, when they had enough chips, they pushed their cultivated family members to the cliff with a reasonable charge, ending the life of the toolman. The killer has only one family, but the family has many family members. It is very sad, but very realistic. For the killers of the organization, those who were hunted down by the organization because of betrayal, or died for some unknown reasons were never worthy of sympathy. Even if everyone is smart and knows that it is likely that the organization is behind the scenes, as long as it does not fall on their heads, and as long as it is not done openly, the killers will deceive themselves and think that the organization is their home. In fact, the organization is indeed a home that allows high quality orphans to become talents. Growing up in such an indifferent environment different from the normal society, Lester understood very early that he would not betray the organization, but would only be abandoned by the organization one day. Even so, he was willing to wait for death. What he had to do now was to make himself a home, and make his sword a family member who would not betray him. So even though it was despicable, he would do it. Even if he put aside the moral factors, he had no choice. This is Valoran, the land of runes. It is more dangerous than imagined. This is why he chose the Nockmerch Plain as his base camp to build his power, instead of simply relying on Noxus and becoming the general of Noxus. The enemy is terrible, so he must use all means to strengthen himself and gain the initiative. No one can help him except himself. Emerald territory, magic, and weapons are just means. What he has to do is to build a strong power, pursue strong power, and then hang those fools who want to offend him on the wooden pole. Just, if you finally get what you have worked hard for your whole life, when you are about to get old, but you find that someone has obtained what you have worked hard for your whole life, as soon as you are born, how would you feel? Seeing Lester suddenly stop and ask her, the girl lowered her head and thought seriously about the scene the man described, and couldn't help feeling a little sad. I might feel that my life has no value. Before her eyes, it seemed that the brutal dark descendants who had fallen from the Ascenders, or the stars on the giant god peak who wantonly dominated the life and death of humans, or the void on the other side of the world, that wanted to devour the world and exterminate life, and the tyrants in the underworld who accumulated power. Compared with the power of these existences, she is not even as good as an ant. But do ants have no value? Patting the girl's somewhat lost head, Lester smiled. Don't think about it. Everyone's value cannot be easily defined. Let's go and find our own value. Yeah. Oren was very dissatisfied with Damasia's sudden change in attitude towards refugees. Just like the blue-skinned yodel who followed him, he hated unwarranted oppression and killing, so he chose to block the man who issued the absurd order in the center of the settlement. We didn't say that at the beginning. You shouldn't do this. Jarvan Dark calmly looked at the tall man who was arguing with him. It was he who helped him and the tribe to win over the exiles in the Rune War, defeated difficulties with Order and the army during the long journey, successfully came to the west coast, and established Demacia. He certainly had the right to stand in front of him and question him with his weird yodel dwarf who he didn't know where he picked up. Oren, I think you should know. Jarvan Dark's voice was very sincere. Noxus has defeated the Mombians by disguising themselves as refugees. The Nockmerch Plains have become the territory of the Noxans. The barbarians are eyeing us covetously. We should not continue to turn a blind eye. The flow of refugees must be curbed, and we do not have the time and manpower to identify them. We can only focus on guarding them. Moreover, I did not kill everyone. If they are not spies of Noxus, they should not resist. Those who resist can only show that they have something to hide. Knowing that he could not convince the man in front of him, Oren sighed and his tone became calmer. Of course I know, but, Jarvan, do you remember what we said at the beginning? Of course. Jarvan Dark said the original oath without hesitation. We want to build a country that can accommodate everyone. No matter what your identity is, no matter what you have done before, as long as you are willing to contribute to the construction of Demacia, you can join Demacia and become a part of us. As long as you are willing to become a part of us, you can get the same treatment as the Demacians, without discrimination, without oppression, and treat everyone equally. Looking at Jarvan Dark deeply, Oren said in a deep voice, then do you know that what you are doing now is a violation of your oath? Many of the refugees from the east are people who really want to join Demacia, but you arrested them and forced them to work. And those who are unwilling to accept forced labor are not all spies from Naxos. My Yodel friend saw your loyal soldiers kill the rebels with his own eyes. Poppy, you speak. Having the opportunity to speak, facing the man's heavy and majestic eyes, the Yodel named Poppy did not show any fear and stepped forward to Javandark and said, "That was a friend I met half a month ago. He is an old refugee from Naxos with a lame right leg. That night, he met me and told me about his story. After organizing his words, Poppy's face was very serious, as if he was talking about something very important. He told me that he was tired of the endless wars in Naxos. His family and children had all died in the Rune Wars. He just wanted to live the rest of his life in peace, so he left the village, crossed the wilderness, and came to Demacia. His name is Norbert. He said that he thought he could join Demacia smoothly after coming to Demacia, but he didn't expect that in Demacia, as a Lark's barbarian, he would still be ostracized. Only other refugees could give him some sincere help. He told me that the way the Demacians ostracized him was not obvious. Those people had smiles on their faces, but secretly made him do more and more tiring work and take less food. Chapter 34 The Lost Bobby. Hearing this, Javandark frowned, but Oren's face showed a little more mockery. The Yodel didn't care what the human in front of him thought, but he continued to talk. But he said he didn't care. After all, he was a foreigner. As long as he could join Demacia, it would be fine. This is indeed the case. With diligent work, the villagers of Demacia tried to accept him, and he also got a temporary residence. Until this morning, a tragic scene happened on the road near the Silent Forest. Poppy's voice was filled with suppressed anger. I just came down from Green Fang Peak and saw him being captured by the soldiers. He tried to escape, but was stabbed in the heart by the soldier's sword. When he died, I didn't even react. I stupidly stopped on the way down the mountain. Looking at the human in front of him angrily, Poppy said coldly, "Because the soldier still had 3 people captured, I was able to catch up with him. At that time, I said I could testify for Norbert. I said Norbert was not a spy of Naxos, but the soldier didn't care about that at all. Okay, Poppy, leave it to me. Javan, I think you should give an explanation for this matter." Knowing that his Yodel friend could not suppress his anger, Oren stepped forward and stopped Poppy behind him. "Don't worry, I will give an explanation. In Demacia, no one can kill innocent people indiscriminately." Javandark turned his head and looked at Bunelis and said in a deep voice, "Bring that soldier here. I want to interrogate him personally." Yes. Bunelis agreed and came back again soon. Under the gaze of Oren and the angry Poppy, a soldier wearing leather silver armor and a fine long sword on his waist was brought over. The soldier was stunned by the Yodel who glared at him, and then bowed on one knee to Javandark. "Lord Javan, Horn, let me ask you, did you kill Norbert?" He didn't know which unlucky soul Norbert was, but he had a deep impression of the Yodel who had argued with him, which made Horn quickly think of the old crippled barbarian who was lame and wanted to run away. After asking a few questions, "Yes, sir, I killed an Oxen spy with my own hands." "Why do you say he is a spy?" Poppy glared at Horn angrily, but Horn just looked at Javandark. "Because after I questioned him about his identity, he chose to run away. If he was not a spy, why would he run away? He must have wanted to return to Naxos to report the secrets stolen in Demacia." Yodel. Javan looked at Poppy, but was interrupted by Poppy. "My name is Poppy. He is talking nonsense. Norbert is not a spy at all." Javandark asked in a deep voice, unwilling to argue with the rude Yodel. "Poppy, don't get excited. I want to ask you, you just said that you saw Norbert run away first, and then Horn drew his sword, right?" Poppy was stunned, and Oren's face sank. Looking at Bunelis, Javan's face remained tense, but his heart was relieved. "If according to what you said, Norbert is not a spy, then why did he choose to run away after Horn's interrogation, instead of waiting for investigation like others? As long as he can find 3 people to prove that he is not a spy, he can be released, so why did he run away?" Maybe he is afraid. Yes, he is afraid. He said that he always felt that the Demacians looked down on him. He must have mistakenly thought that Horn wanted to kill him, so he ran away. Enough. Poppy, don't say any more. Poppy was stunned, then lowered her head in disappointment, and her long bent ears and two big braids also fell down weakly. Oren stopped Poppy's incoherent speech, saluted to Jarvandark, and said in a deep voice, "Chief Jarvan, it seems that this incident was a misunderstanding. But I still advise Chief Jarvan to be more cautious in treating refugees. If there is really a mistaken killing, it will undoubtedly be a disaster for Demacia. We need a more tolerant policy to treat refugees." "Of course, General Oren." Nodding with a smile, Jarvandark motioned Horn to withdraw. "I think this Yodel is very good. She has been with you for a long time. She was in the team before we settled here. She is also familiar with the people of Demacia. Why not let her identify the spies? As long as she says it's okay, I will let her go." Oren turned to look at Poppy, who was in a low mood, knowing that this was Jarvandark giving both parties a way out. At this point, the matter of Norbert can only end here. Whether it was an unjust killing or not, it can't be investigated further without being in the right. "Poppy, look." Poppy raised her head and looked at the worried eyes of her human friend Oren, and could only say HMM in a sullen voice. "This is already the best result." Jarvandark smiled as he looked at the two. "Then, that's the end of it." The two left the center of the settlement, and as they glanced at the newly built buildings, Poppy was not as happy as before. Her friend Norbert died, but she had no way to redress his injustice. This cruel fact made the Yodel people lose their spirits. Oren looked at his Yodel friend and felt a little worried. "Poppy, don't be too sad. We have done our best. Norbert's death is no longer a worthless death. He helped other refugees. He made you a refugee examiner. Since Garen said so, he will definitely not allow soldiers to kill people on their own initiative. It can be said that Norbert saved many people. I understand, Oren." Poppy slumped her shoulders as she spoke listlessly. "I just suddenly realized that some things are not what I want to do. I always thought that the order and rules you showed by leading the tour group through the wilderness and successfully arriving in Demacia were a great thing, but now I wonder if such order and rules are controlled by others, will the results be not good?" Hearing the Yodel say this, the man was stunned. In a trance, he seemed to see the scene when Poppy suddenly jumped out of the bushes and asked him questions before arriving in Demacia. Lively, optimistic, kind, fearless of authority, helpful. Among all the people in the army, only this blue-skinned Yodel girl dared to attack her crotch with all her strength, as if she had a piece of steel plate armor installed on her crotch. He didn't know whether the above good character was the nature of all Yodels, but he knew that this should be Poppy's nature, and Poppy shouldn't be so depressed now. If we are not satisfied with the result, we can change it. Isn't that the reason for our efforts? Demacia is like a baby who has just learned to walk. Everything has just begun. Squatting down, Oren reached out to soothe Poppy's little head. The voice of the steely tough guy was rough, but gentle like a mother who had just given birth to a new life. "We will always encounter setbacks and difficulties in our lives. We can be sad, but we must never be defeated. If we all lose, who will change these injustices?" Feeling Oren's warmth, Poppy raised her head, stretched out her little hand, and gently held Oren's thumb. "Thanks to I Climb by Myself, book friend 2017110618241143 right square bracket, pork chop sauce, Leisure Immortal, several readers for their monthly ticket support. If you like this work, you can leave a message in the comment area, or cast your precious recommendation votes and monthly tickets. Richer people can also support it with coins. Hangai is very grateful. December is here, and Hangai also wants to rush for monthly tickets. I don't ask for a list, but only for more rankings and support. Hangai will continue to work hard to accumulate manuscripts and put them on the shelves as early as possible next year, just like Leo Badeng, to give everyone a big wave at an important moment. With so many people supporting, even if I quit my current job, I will definitely continue to write this book and will not give up. Please rest assured. Come on together. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Best Place for Adventure. Emerald Territory, Eastern Military Camp Training Ground. Jessie held the wooden training sword tightly in both hands, staring at the blonde girl 5 meters in front of her. A string of hot sweat dripped down her forehead and disappeared in the dusty ground. Margaret's face was cold, and she shook her wrist and stabbed out with a sword. The hasty parry had no effect at all. Margaret retracted her feint, and the wooden sword twisted, and the sword spine hit the sword guard of Jessie's wooden sword, successfully knocking the wooden sword away. The next second, the sword pointed at the wheat-colored neck of a girl of the same age. Another string of sweat dripped from her chin, but this time it was cold sweat. Every time she practiced fighting, Jessie had a real illusion that she was going to die in the training ground. Sister Margaret, I lost. The blonde girl retracted the wooden sword with a calm face. You have made great progress. At least now you can successfully kill a mountain chicken. Sticking out her tongue, Jessie was not affected by Margaret's venomous tongue. Instead, she took a step forward and hugged the blonde girl's right arm holding the sword, acting like a spoiled child. Feeling the oppressed arm, the girl raised her eyebrows and looked down. Well, today I'm wearing training cloth shoes, and the heels are grey. Feeling the body cold, Jessie looked around in a panic, but found nothing. Finally, she mustered up the courage to make her request. Sister Margaret, can you give me half a day off? Although Margaret was a little strange, she still said lightly, okay, but you need to give me a reason why you want a vacation. After hesitating for a while, looking at the imposing blonde girl in front of her, Jessie still didn't have the courage to lie, so she could only tell the truth. Actually, Ms. Rose is coming. Lord Lester will accompany Ms. Rose this afternoon. Go ahead. Jessie stared blankly at Margaret, who turned and left, and scratched her head. When did Sister Margaret become so easy to talk to? On the other side, Lester was drawing a design sketch with a quill pen on the desk in the room. From the lines in the frame, it can be seen that it is a kind of beautiful plain clothes that is convenient for work. There are 2 large pockets on the outside of the top and 2 hidden pockets on the inside. There are buckles near the waist for tight waist. The pants are similar to overalls. In addition to the pockets, there are buckles on the waist for hanging knives and axes. It looks beautiful and generous. Outside Lester's room, 4 or 5 shadow crossbowmen and 10 narcs and black iron guards were guarding nearby, 1 dark and 1 bright. Soon the soldiers discovered that there were uninvited guests approaching the Lord's mansion. They were 2 sloppy little girls, one with blonde hair and the other with black hair. Their faces were as dark as the miners who had just gone down to the mine to dig coal. They looked a little pitiful. Deputy Captain, are you going to do it? The members of the Narcs and Black Iron Guard looked at Absol. Did you see those expressionless people do it? Why are you so anxious when they don't do it? Think before you do it. They are just children. Can you do it? Absol rolled his eyes. Let them in. Lord Lester has said it long ago. Others are fine, but only children cannot be refused, let alone such a courageous child. Looking at the 2 little guys who were looking at him cautiously, Absol returned a warm smile, which stunned the little blonde girl. They are the hope of the Emerald Territory. Miss Hap, who was holding her sister Hina, breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, the Lord was a good man, and the Lord's guards were also good people. Not only would they not stop him, but they also encouraged him to explore further. There is nothing more exciting than exploring outside the Lord's house. The most important thing is safety. Who dares to be presumptuous in front of Lord Lester? Sister, why don't we go? Feeling some strange eyes hidden in the dark, Hina pulled Miss Ha's clothes, a little panicked. Don't be afraid, the Lord's guards are here. No one can hurt us. Miss Ha shook her head and comforted her sister. I must take a look at the Lord today. I heard from others that the Lord is a rare handsome man. I must see him with my own eyes. Hina whispered. That's not as good as the big brother who gave our pink berry last time. Miss Ha was stunned, but she rarely refuted. Before that, she had indeed never seen a man with such excellent appearance. But compared with the excellent appearance, she was more interested in Lord Lester, who established the Emerald Territory. Sister, stay here and don't move. I'll go knock on the door. Okay. Seeing Hina nod obediently and wait there, Miss Ha tiptoed to the door. The guards couldn't help but smile at her funny behavior like a little chicken, and secretly encourage the brave girl. Even the shadow crossbowmen hiding in the dark and on the treetops had a little more ripples in their hearts and unconsciously smiled. Deodila, her face was full of courage, but the knock on the door was not satisfactory. Even Hina couldn't hear why her sister knocked. Looking behind her sneakily, Miss Ha noticed that her sister was a little confused. Her cheeks suddenly blushed, so she had to turn around and knock on the door again. Deodan, come on, little guy. The Lord's mansion is about to be conquered by you. Unlike the shadow crossbowmen who turned their eyes around again, the Narcs and Black Iron Guard soldiers who were guarding in the open saluted the blonde girl. This was much more interesting than standing there stupidly. Miss Ha turned around again, but saw several soldiers giving her a thumbs up. She couldn't help but puff out her chest and felt a little proud. Then, Cinna, who was standing there, couldn't help it anymore. She took 2 steps forward and, in front of Miss Ha's dull eyes, waved her little fist and hit the wooden door once, twice, and 3 times. Bang, bang, bang. The deafening sound of knocking on the door came from the door of the Lord's house. The guards' faces twitched, dust flew, and the whole 3-story wooden house was vaguely seen shaking. Is this the future of the Emerald Territory? It looks so powerful, it's comparable to the legendary trolls in the Freljord. After knocking on the door, he realized what he had done. He looked at his sister, and both of them turned pale. Huh? Who wants to tear down my house? Hearing a familiar voice coming from the room, the 2 girls were stunned again, and then lowered their heads. No matter what, it's right to bow your head and admit your mistakes first. Confused, Lester opened the door, and in front of him were 2 little guys with their heads down, with an attitude of admitting their mistakes. After a closer look, Lester was amused. It turned out to be you 2. Looking up, Miss Ha and Hina widened their eyes with surprise. It's you, / it's the handsome big brother. I was wondering who wanted to tear down the door of my house. It turned out to be you 2 little guys. Please vote, please vote, please vote, please vote. Chapter 36, The Cute Lalita and the Sad Driver. Amid the exclamations of the 2 little girls, Lester picked up the 2 little girls and held them in his arms. He turned around a little and put the 2 little girls with red faces down again amid the exclamations. This is a small reward he reserved for the brave, and it is also the fastest way to get closer to the children, and it is also an explanation to the little girl who gave him a surprise. Regardless of gender, the little ones who dare to break through the guard's defense and break into his room will receive such treatment. This is a reward for the brave, and it can also gain his attention and friendship. Come on, which piece of wood do you think is not good looking? Point it out, brother will tear it down. Brother, your door is very beautiful, no need to tear it down. Feeling strange in her body, Hina lowered her head embarrassedly. This is not the same feeling as contacting her father at all. Her heart beats very fast and her skin is itchy. Obviously they are all men. Why do they feel different? Miss Ha looked at such a friendly big brother, stepped forward and held Lester's big hand. Big brother, so you are Lord Lester? Lester touched the little guy's head without disdaining the girl's right hand full of mud. Yes, I'm the Lord of Emerald Territory. My name is Lester. What's your name? My name is Miss Ha. Miss Ha jumped for joy and was about to speak when she saw Hina suddenly hugged Lester's other hand. My name is Hina, big brother Lester. Hello. Hello. Hina just hummed the nursery rhyme unique to the Mostek clan and came to the door, but saw Lester surrounded by 2 little girls. She couldn't help but be stunned. Aren't you accompanying Ms. Rose? Brother? They are. Seeing the girl who just came home, Lester smiled. You're back just in time. Go give the 2 little guests a hot bath and change their dirty clothes. Find something similar for them to wear first. I'll cook for everyone today and make something different to eat. After giving just instructions, Lester turned his head and said softly to the 2 little guys, you 2 should go take a bath with Sister GC, okay? Then I'll make you something delicious. Hearing that they could eat something delicious, Miss Ha and Hina's eyes lit up, and they nodded happily. GC looked at the little girl holding her hand blankly and walked towards the basement bathroom in a daze. It seems that this is not what I came back for, right? After the 3 girls left, Lester walked to the door and clapped his hands. Morris, holding a crossbow, jumped off the roof and knelt on one knee in silence. Go check the background of these two little girls and tell their families that they had dinner here today and I will send someone to take them back in the evening. Don't let them worry. Yes. As silent as ever, Morris ran away. Closing the door, Lester looked at his hands that were stained with mud, smiled softly, and walked towards the kitchen. What should I make for my little guests? Looking at the two little girls who had washed off the dirt, a touch of surprise flashed in GC's eyes. The blonde girl named Miss Ha has smooth shoulder-length hair, delicate features and fine skin. She always has a sense of pride and precocity on her face. She is eager to try everything. She is outgoing and has her own opinions. She is a natural beauty. Hina has smooth black hair that reaches her ears. She is so cute that it is difficult to tell whether she is male or female. She has a gentle personality. At first glance, she looks like a boy with a feminine appearance. Only her soft and beautiful features can show that this boy is fake and a real little beauty. Looking at herself in the mirror again, GC's eyes suddenly became more jealous, but the jealousy was quickly suppressed by the girl and deeply sealed in the depths of her heart. The illusion of the two little girls being drowned in the bathtub was annihilated. Life is good now, and there is no need to fight for anything. Thinking of this, even the desire to interfere in the affairs between Ms. Rose and Lester has faded a lot. Do what you should do, and you will not be abandoned. That's enough. Sister GC, what kind of person is Lord Lester? Can you tell me about him? Miss Ha, who had washed herself, did not care about her outstanding appearance. The reason why she and her sister looked so ugly and dirty before was just because of self-protection, as her father said. Now that she and her sister have entered the eyes of the Lord of Emerald Territory, safety is no longer a problem, not to mention that the public security in Emerald Territory is very good. Big Brother is a good person. His pink berries are so sweet. Zina recalled the pink berries she got from Lester and licked her pink lips subconsciously. Lord, he. After organizing her words, GC began to tell what she had experienced and heard. He said that he had forgotten his previous memories. One day a year ago, he was captured by the Narxons and taken to the Immortal Fortress. The two little girls widened their eyes, fearing that they would miss some key parts. With a smile, GC gained a sense of satisfaction from teaching and imparting knowledge. Two horses were driving the two-wheeled covered carriage behind them at a brisk pace on the Valoran plain. The male mage in a black robe should have been sitting on a high seat to be admired by mortals, but at this moment he could only wield the whip in his hand, controlling the bridle and reins of the horse, and running to the west. Because the person sitting in the carriage was a female lecturer of black magic who was proficient in human nature at the Black Rose Academy, the beautiful Ms. Rose. As the master behind the Black Rose and the direct subordinate of the mysterious Pale Lady, Ms. Rose had a special status among the mages. To please Ms. Rose was roughly equivalent to please the elusive Pale Lady. Thinking of this, the male mage couldn't help but think of the same man, the one who was waiting for Ms. Rose to come to his door in his territory, but he was waving the whip bitterly as a coachman, sending the woman he longed for to another man's bed. It was unfair, too unfair. Hicks, are you dissatisfied with me? Suddenly, Ms. Rose's calm voice came from behind. The man's hair stood on end, and a terrible silence came from behind. He felt it carefully, but there was nothing, as if it was an illusion. Great Ms. Rose, I think you must have misunderstood me. My admiration for you has never changed. How could I be dissatisfied with you? Not daring to look back, the man found that Ms. Rose did not speak, but became more nervous. He knew that some terrible black magic could make people live a life worse than death. It is conceivable that there are few normal people who practice black magic. Let's leave this woman behind to the man. He can't handle it himself. PS1. I really didn't expect that so many people would support this book. Hung, I thought that few people could read such a long epic work now. It's really a surprise. Maybe this book can have a good result. Come on, Grin. Come on, Grin. PS2. Thanks to Running Big Spinach, Cold Winter Wind, Sizzling Rain, Book Friend 2020072226464442, Right Square Bracket, Icarus 70. Beer G Soul of Sorrow, Deep Moon and Clear Blue, for their monthly ticket support, as well as all the readers who voted for recommendations. Because there are too many people, I will not list them one by one here. Thank you all for your support. Chapter 37 Fishbone and Puppet Cat. Wow. Sister. This is delicious. Sister, this is not only delicious, but also beautiful. Wow, this is so good. Emerald Territory, Lord's Villa. The long dining table was filled with rich food. Amid the two little girls shouting and exclaiming, Lester took the initiative to pick up dishes for the little ones like a father. Of course, he did not forget GC, who was silent and focused on eating. Braised wild boar trotters, spicy pheasant and mushroom pot, pink berry grape salad, fresh fish potato lettuce soup, sweet syrup extracted from sweet roots, brown peppercorns for spicy taste. Lester used the ingredients and spices he could recognize for the first time to cook, and judging from the speed at which the food disappeared, it looked pretty good. At least it was much better than the wheat bread, rice dumplings, or salted fish bacon, and fruit salad before. I don't know how it is in other places. Anyway, the food culture of the land of Valoran Plain is too poor. The two little girls who were feasting on the food were originally a little worried that they would have to go back to eat bread and salted fish, but at this moment, they completely forgot about the food at home. Big brother Lester is really the best. The food on the table disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lester suddenly discovered that the main force was actually the two little guys, and he couldn't help but be more cautious. Being able to eat is a good thing, but if you can eat so much, will you be unable to feed them? Eat carefully, there may be fish bones that haven't been picked out in the fish soup. Seeing Miss Ha gulping down the wooden bowl to drink the fish soup, Lester reminded her, but it was still a step too late. It was not Miss Ha who was stuck by the fish bone, but her sister. Hina opened her mouth with tears in her eyes and began to spit bubbles like a fish out of water. Her beautiful eyes like black pearls couldn't stop crying, which made people feel distressed. Hina, are you okay? Waving his hand to signal Miss Ha not to get excited, Lester held Hina in his arms and comforted her, and the little girl felt a little better. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Tell me where it pierced you. Woo woo woo. Ah, 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 ah. Open your mouth wide and let me see. You point it. Ah, 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 ah. In a mouthful of food residue, Lester found the target, a short and thick fish bone just inserted into the gap between the back molars, and a little blood continued to seep out from the gap. It is definitely impossible to pick it out with your fingers. You must use tools such as fine tweezers. Fortunately, he had prepared it in advance, and some commonly used small tools in life had been commissioned to be made by the blacksmith Lister. Okay, I saw it. I can take it out right away. Wait a minute. Putting Hina back on the chair, Lester hurried away and went upstairs to get something. It's okay, sister. Believe brother Lester. Holding her sister's hand, Miss Ha encouraged her sister. Sina, with tears in her eyes, half opened her mouth and stopped crying, suppressing her anxiety and pain. Dung, dung, dung. Lester's hurried footsteps came from upstairs. Holding a pair of tweezers the size of his little finger, Lester held Hina in his arms again. Hina also sat on Lester's lap obediently and opened her mouth. Miss Ha nervously watched the thrilling scene in front of her. While praying in her heart, she was also a little surprised by the little thing in Lester's hand. After successfully removing the fish bone, Hina felt her whole body relax, and the uncomfortable feeling disappeared. The fear she had never experienced made the little girl break through her psychological defenses in an instant. After gaining a sense of security, she hugged Lester and cried loudly, as if she had suffered a great injustice. She had never cried like this even in Kiram's arms. Okay, 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 don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Brother will show you something nice. Lester signaled with his eyes to the stunned Miss Ha, and the complicated looking GC patted Hina's back and carried Hina upstairs. The two turned their heads at the same time and looked at each other. Looking at the barbarian girl who seemed to sympathize with her, Miss Ha didn't understand what she meant, but she always felt that she was wronged and unhappy. Her sympathy for her sister suddenly disappeared. She didn't even understand why. She subconsciously used a spoon to pick up the fish meat in the wooden bowl, but she couldn't see any fish bones. She felt even more irritated and simply picked up the bowl and continued to gulp. Looking at the girl's brilliant blonde hair, GC couldn't help but think of her sister Margaret, who always secretly looked at Lester and couldn't help but sigh. Sister Margaret was sweating profusely on the training ground, while Brother Lester was waiting for Ms. Rose at home. By the way, Ms. Rose also had black hair. Eating is the main thing. Holding little Hina, Lester walked into the studio on the 3rd floor. There was an unfinished work clothes sketch on the table. Walking to the wooden cabinet where he used to display his works, Lester picked up a handmade wood carving. The wooden sculpture is a silly looking kitten, about the size of a palm. For its style and appearance, you can refer to the tabby cat Zhaoqi in Qianshan's private cat. It is walking in a relaxed posture, with 3 legs that can touch the ground as a support point. The puppet cat was handed to Hina, and the little girl took it while sobbing, looking at the puppet cat in her hand with wide and curious eyes. This is a magical kitten. It will comfort you when you are most sad. Hina, you must protect it. Now I give it to you. So cute, thank you, Brother Lester. Lester was relieved when he put the little guy who stopped crying on the ground. It is much harder to coax a child than to fight a robber. After dinner, the sun has begun to set. The 2 little girls were a little tired after tossing around for a whole morning. Hina cried at noon, and even Miss Ha was a little listless. From time to time, she glanced at the puppet cat in her sister's hand, and I don't know what she was thinking on her tense little face. If you're tired, go upstairs and take a nap. Jissy, take them to any of the empty rooms on the 2nd floor. Okay, Brother Lester. Let's go upstairs with my sister. After watching Jissy and the 2 little girls leave, Lester sat on a wooden chair on the 1st floor and clapped his hands. Pushing open the unlocked wooden door, Morris walked in and whispered, "They have a father named Ziram, a refugee who is said to be from Mount Targan. He lived outside the quiet forest for some time before. This time, because Demasha began to capture refugees, he had to come to the Emerald Territory and became a citizen of the Emerald Territory." As he spoke, Morris found that the man in front of him looked a little dazed, and then he came back to his senses after he stopped, and his eyes seemed a little complicated. This made him wonder if he had just had an illusion. "It's okay, go on," Morris continued. "I have told their father Ziram that, although he is a little worried about his daughters, he still trusts you very much, and agreed to let his daughters eat at your place. He said that he can be sent back before the evening." Chapter 38. No matter what, the silence on the 1st floor was a bit weird. Fortunately, Lester spoke up soon. "Pay special attention to Kiram's family in the future. Send at least 6 shadow crossbowmen to protect him and his daughters. One person must be secretly guarded by 2 people at the same time. No mistakes are allowed. Kiram's movements must be reported to me in time. If he shows signs of leaving the Emerald Territory with his daughters, you must notify me immediately." "Yes." As if remembering something, Lester continued. "Arrange some easier work for Kiram, and increase his remuneration slowly, but let him go home as late as possible, so that he has no time to accompany his daughters." Lester accepted the meaningful gaze of the paralyzed man in front of him without changing his expression, and said lightly, "You can understand that Emerald Territory must control these 2 girls, no matter what means. The 2 of them are more important than the Shadow Crossbowmen and all the Narcs and Black Iron Guards combined. So no matter what, I will tie them to the land of Emerald Territory and never allow others to take them away for any reason, unless they leave on their own initiative. Understand?" "Understood." "Okay, go." Lester leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and his mouth slowly opened. The smile was a little presumptuous, suppressing madness and joy, but it was always silent. After a long time, the silent smile dissipated, and a long sigh came. "The angel's wings are broken." Outside the cordon on the east of Emerald Territory, 4 Narcs and Black Iron Guards wearing iron-studded armor used their weapons to stop the 2-passenger covered carriage that attempted to enter Emerald Territory. Before Hicks, who was driving the car, changed his face, the Narcs and Black Iron Guard soldier in the lead asked, "Is this the carriage of Lady Rose?" "I'm Rose. Please come in. Please allow me to lead you to Lord Lester's mansion." After checking that everything was correct, the Narcs and Black Iron Guard quickly made way, and one person took the initiative to lead the way. After taking a deep look at the Narcs and soldiers who stopped her carriage, Rose lowered the curtain. "Let's go." The carriage started again, following behind the leading soldier. "Lord Lester has instructed me to give you a brief introduction to the current construction of the Emerald Territory. I wonder if you are interested? Tell me about it. He quickly introduced the 4 major areas of the Emerald Territory to Rose, and also introduced the Narkson Black Iron Guard and Shadow Crossbowman Army to Rose. Rose in the carriage listened quietly, somewhat surprised by the Emerald Territory's peculiar development plan, and also happy that Lester did not hide things from her, but the specific situation still needed to be clarified by meeting him in person. Unfortunately, the magic power reserve of this real clone is limited. The farther away from the main body, the greater the consumption of magic power. I can't stay here for too long. Otherwise, it would be a good idea to let the clone live in this beautiful place. Maybe there will be a chance in the future. Lord Rose, the mansion of Lord Lester is in front. You can go directly there. I need to go back to stand guard, so I won't go with you. The mission was completed, and the soldiers simply saluted Narcissus and turned away. Getting off the carriage, nodding to the soldiers and crossbowmen along the way, Rose came to the door and was about to knock on it, but the next moment the door suddenly opened. The silent man opened his arms and a big hug made Rose freeze in place. Then the female mage hugged back, and the two were like a real couple who had been separated for a short time. Hicks withdrew his gaze sourly, completely gave up the idea, and began to meditate. How many days can you stay this time? After kissing the woman's face, Lester hugged Rose and walked into the room. The two of them also went straight to the second floor, closed the door, and sat by the bed. We have to leave tomorrow morning. Recently, the Immortal Fortress has entered a new period of development. There are many things to decide, and I can't be absent. Because you successfully repelled the bandit group and defeated the 2 barbarian tribes in the north, Narcissus has ushered in a precious period of development. The floating hearts of other tribes have gradually stabilized, and they want to gain military merit in the battle. For this reason, Nadaz and Stander are discussing how to absorb other tribes, so that each tribe can retain its tribal fighting style, and accept the reorganization of the Narkson military system for easy command. With a little apology on her face, only Rose herself knew why she had to leave tomorrow. It's okay. One afternoon and one night are enough. Rose, I really miss you. Lister picked up Rose and laid her flat on the bed, his eyes full of expectation. I miss you too, Lister. Help me. The woman raised her arm, revealing the floor in her cool robe. Outside the door, GC scratched her head, and the sleepy girl chose to go back to her room to catch up on sleep. It was getting dark. Sister? Sister? Do you hear that sound? Holding the puppet cat tightly, Hina's face flushed, and she pushed the little blonde girl lying on the other side. Slowly opening her hazy eyes, she first saw her sister, and then the cute puppet cat in her sister's hand. Miss Ha couldn't help but feel a little envious. Before the girl could say anything, a strange sound came from outside the wall of the room. It seemed to be in pain, and it seemed to suppress excitement. It was very strange, and made people feel itchy. What is this sound? In addition to Brother Lester, it seems to be a woman's voice. Is it Sister Jess? What's wrong with her? Miss Ha was also a little confused. It shouldn't be. Sister Jess's voice is a little crisper than this, Hina said hesitantly, and her eyes met with her sister's. How about we go and have a look? As if she understood what her sister was thinking, Miss Ha mustered up her courage and proposed her own idea. Why not? What if Brother Lester and that sister are doing something important that cannot be disturbed? We would be too rude. After hesitating for a while, Hina instinctively rejected Miss Ha's proposal. Since her sister chose to refuse, Miss Ha could only give up. It is indeed not a good thing to spy on other people's secrets, just like she also has little secrets that she does not want her sister to know. Knock knock knock. Miss Ha. Hina? Hehe, are you awake? It's getting late. It's time to send you home. The undisguised voice of Jess came from outside the door. At the same time, the strange noises from the next room became much smaller, and soon the two little guys could not hear anything. Sister Jess, we are awake. Wearing a large size of cloth shoes, Hina opened the door. Outside the door was Jess with 2 dark circles under her eyes. Hina could not help but be shocked. Sister GC, what's wrong with you? Are your eyes hurt? My eyes are not hurt. GC smiled and touched Hina's little head, then sighed and dozed off again. But my spirit is hurt, and it's very bad. Chapter 39 Selection Test. In the Emerald Territory, in the Eastern Military Camp, the Shadow Crossbowman's base was empty. With Lester's personal selection, the Shadow Crossbowman had expanded to 65 people, including survivors of the original North Nor village in Narxons who served in the Narxon Black Iron Guard and passed the loyalty test and wanted to join. The conditions in the territory were sufficient. After breaking down the training posture and independently developing a set of training methods suitable for killer training, Lester began to select and train the Shadow Killer Nightblade. On this day, after training for a period of time, the Shadow Crossbowmen ushered in their first test. In the south of the Emerald Territory, inside the natural cave of the shimmering Silver Mountains, it was pitch black. The natural caves that extended in all directions were of different widths and heights, and there was no light, so the visibility was so low that you couldn't see your hand in front of you. More than 60 people wearing black eye masks moved forward in the dark, aiming at the source of the whistle that spread out from the depths of the cave. The whistle sounded every 30 seconds, and the sound waves were refracted by the stone walls. The ethereal whistle echoed in the cave, making it difficult to determine the direction. Many people had lost their sense of direction. After the whistle spread back from behind, they turned back without realizing it. Some people were tripped by the pits under their feet, fell straight to the ground and screamed, becoming a distraction for others. No matter what the result is, as long as you take off the eye mask that casts detection magic, or fail to reach the source of the whistle within the specified time, you will lose the opportunity to join the Nightblade this time. Morris stood there, not in a hurry to move. After the rest of the people around him left, the general direction of the source of the whistle was determined, and the young man began to move his feet and walk deep into the cave in the dark. In the darkness, in addition to the whistle, there are also the sound of water drops that interfere with your own judgment, footsteps, and panting that need to be distinguished. In addition, the road surface and the top of the cave are uneven. If you can't protect yourself and master your body balance, it is easy to fall or bump into yourself. It can be said to be full of difficulties. In Lester's words, this trial tests the perception of the environment and the balance of the body. The whistle blows every 30 seconds. I must count and catch the direction from which the whistle first comes in silence and move resolutely in that direction. I must not be confused by the echoing whistle and other noises. I must also protect my vital points while moving and not be hindered by the stone cones above my head or the pits under my feet. After trying to practice the assassination skills taught by Lester, Morris, whose senses and flexibility have improved a lot, has the confidence to complete the trial. In order to get revenge as soon as possible, he is willing to give everything he has. After passing through 3 forks in a row, Morris was stunned when he heard the whistle coming from behind him. At this time, the whistle behind him had spread, and then 2 seconds later, another whistle came from the right front, coming from behind him. Caught between 2 whistles, Morris panicked and was at a loss. When he came to his senses, he had lost his sense of direction and was not sure whether he was facing the direction he was heading or whether he had turned back. Why did the whistle come from behind me when I counted to the 30th second and then from the front 2 seconds later? Which direction is it from? Sure, 2 seconds later, 2 whistles came from 2 directions. The confidence he had originally had disappeared. Facing the sudden unknown situation, Morris' forehead began to sweat. Forcing himself to calm down, Morris, who had lost his way, simply sat cross-legged on the ground, put aside all the decisions he had just made, and reorganized his thoughts. First of all, it is certain that the 2 whistles are definitely not the same whistle. Both are real, not echoes. Through the breathing method in the assassination skills, Morris successfully calmed himself down, and his mind began to work. Since they are all independent whistles, one of them must be fake. Before the trial, Lord Lester did not say that such a situation would occur. Then the extra whistles are likely to be interference items used to increase the difficulty. It is definitely not accidental. The extra whistles test our ability to deal with emergencies. In other words, there is a way to crack this, and it is definitely not a dead end. If 2 different people whistle, there must be subtle differences. So, what is the whistle like at the beginning? Sure, 2 whistles were heard again 2 seconds apart from each other, coming from 2 directions. Standing up, Morris turned and walked behind him. Found you. At noon, most of the members of the Shadow Crossbowmen left the cave and returned to the base with their heads down. A few were injured and had bad knocks. Meredith felt the magic fluctuations on the eye mask and shook his head at Lester, indicating that no one was cheating. Behind Lester, there were only 5 people left. Nodding in response to Meredith, Lester turned around with a serious face. You have successfully passed the first trial, but this is just the beginning. The 5 people, including Morris, knelt on one knee indifferently to show their obedience. Next, I will teach you the advanced assassination skills. The next trial will be more difficult. Practice hard and don't let me down. Yes. In Demacia, Blake, a refugee from Shurima, wiped the sweat from his forehead and sighed bitterly. It has been almost a month since he was captured by Demacia soldiers and taken to the quarry. Due to insufficient daily food supply, his body has lost a lot of weight and his ribs are clearly visible. Even if he is passive, he can't stand the damage to his body caused by long-term labor. He can't find 3 Demacians who are willing to testify for him. He can't prove that he is not a spy of Naxos. Blake can only continue to swing the pickaxe every day in the open-air quarry in the Urus Mountains, voluntarily dedicating himself to the construction of Demacia city defense and adding bricks and tiles. Stop. Gather together. Hearing the voice of the supervisor from a distance, Blake dropped his blunt iron pickaxe and followed the other dozen people timidly to the open space outside the quarry. Is it that Yodel? What is she doing here? Isn't she here to quarry as well? Blake was a little confused when he noticed that the person standing in front of the supervisor was a dwarf who often followed General Oren. Line up. A dozen people lined up into rows, listlessly looking at the Demacia quarry supervisor who was about to torment them again. The Yodel, carrying a small round shield, quickly came over, opened his big serious eyes and carefully examined the exhausted refugees one by one, and soon stopped in front of Blake. I met you in a border village in Demacia. You came from the east just after Oren led the team to settle here. You have been in Demacia for so long, and no one is willing to testify for you? I have nothing, but they want a lot, so I'm here. He shook his head with a wry smile. Although he didn't know what the Yodel, who was not even as tall as his waist, meant, the situation couldn't get any worse. The Yodel sighed, turned and said to the supervisor, he's fine. I'll check on the others. Okay, Master Pochi. It's Poppy. Thanks to the reader, Yishai and Tenghua, for the reward and recommendation votes, and thanks to the monthly ticket support of several readers, Nyan Shaoking Kuang, Outlaw Madman, A Town with Yulai, Abstract Repair Worker, and What Are You Doing? Chapter 40 Top of the Food Chain. Zerum gradually adapted to the life in the Emerald Territory, forgetting the shadows brought by Mount Targon and Demacia. After leaving enough bread and bacon at home, he went to the North District early every day to take care of the farmland and fruit trees. At the end of the night, he went to the food warehouse to learn how to use numbers to count the day's harvest from the mage who knew how to count. Finally, he went home happily with the unique benefits of the warehouse keeper, a few apples or pears, and watched his tired daughters fall asleep after playing in the Lord's house for a day. I didn't dare to think about such a life when I was in Demacia. I didn't expect that I would live such a good life in the Emerald Territory in less than 2 months. Except for reducing some time to spend with my daughters, there were basically no major problems. The work was leisurely and the treatment was good. As for washing away the dirt, the 2 daughters showed some outstanding looks. Just kidding. When I had already chopped off the heads of several people with bad intentions, who would dare to attack their own daughters under the protection of the Narkson Black Iron Guard. Although there are some rumors that the Lord has taken a fancy to his daughter who has not yet grown up, but what's the big deal? His daughter is already beautiful and outstanding, and it is understandable that the Lord has taken a fancy to her. It is better than those messy people. The most important thing is that he has asked his daughter about the specific situation in the Lord's house. The Lord did not do anything out of the ordinary during his time. He just loved the 2 little ones as much as he did. As for what will happen when they grow up, of course, he will talk about it after they grow up. If his daughter really likes the Lord, it will be a good ending to let the 2 daughters marry the Lord and enjoy happiness, and he can also enjoy his old age. For Kiram, as long as his daughter can eat well, grow up smoothly, and no longer have any relationship with the godmother, this is enough. What's more, when he was outside the quiet forest, he often went out to work all day. Compared with the situation at that time, now he is living like a god, so there is nothing to complain about. Under the flickering light of the copper animal oil lamp, the two daughters' sleeping faces were particularly sweet. Kiran smiled gently, tightened the quilts for the two daughters, and wrapped up their little feet. On the low cabinet by the window, there was a cute puppet cat with a strange shape. The man understood that this was a gift from Lord Leicester to his little daughter, and the little daughters-in-law liked it very much. Walking to the window, Kiran looked at the starry night sky. His eyes were a little hazy, as if he had crossed the mountains and rivers, and returned to the giant god peak, where the divine light shone, facing countless cold and majestic sights. That was the sight of the gods, that was indifference to mortals. At this moment, the wife chosen by the righteous star spirit was among them. Perhaps, she was wearing dazzling armor, holding a weapon flashing with flames, and fighting with the enemies of the gods. Misira, you must have forgotten me. The curtains were drawn, and the animal oil lamp was extinguished. Please also forget the two daughters you gave birth to. Narkson calendar, 2 AD. Tick 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 tick. The vibrant world began to sprout green shoots under the nourishment of spring rain. Mountain streams flowed, tall trees exuded greenness, swaying gently in the moist and warm air under the spring breeze, intoxicated by the gentle drizzle. After the sun passed across the sky, Emerald Territory stretched lazily, slowly opened its charming eyes, and glowed with its own brilliance. The smoke from cooking dissipated in the misty sky, and the people of the territory put on spring clothes, and walked in the drizzle to their workplaces wearing large hats. Those who went to the North District were farmers, vegetable farmers and fruit farmers. Those who went to the South District were workshop apprentices, craftsmen, or miners, and those who went to the West District were woodcutters and builders. As for the East District of Emerald Territory, Narxus Black Iron Guards and Shadow Crossbowmen were stationed there, carrying out the training plan personally formulated by Leicester. Under the command of Captain Margaret, the young men who had just joined the Narxum Black Iron Guard began to learn the importance of discipline in a professional army by standing in line. Physical training, combat training and tactical explanations were all indispensable teaching contents, and were taught by Captain Margaret and Tactical Instructor Meredith. After a year of actual combat training, the originally immature Margaret quickly became mature. The cruel battlefield swordsmanship, the cold face, and the murderous aura were enough to make ordinary newcomers forget that they were in front of a 16-year-old girl. The troublemakers were completely subdued. The original deputy captain of the Black Iron Guard, Apsa, was transferred to the Shadow Crossbowman Corps as the commander, because the original commander Morris and some of the original army's crossbowmen had gradually disappeared from everyone's sight, and had been missing for several months. Nokmachi Plains, southwest of Emerald Territory, close to the northern foothills of the shimmering Silver Mountains, deep in the quiet forest. Hidden murderous intent cannot fully describe the cruel living environment in the dense forest. On the forest floor covered with muddy and rotten leaves, the dark purple Bonus scorpion, which would kill with one shot, flashed and scurried onto the pile of rotten wood that could be used as a footrest. The dark green venomous snake coiled on the branches, hissing and spitting out its tongue, waiting for its ignorant prey to enter the palace of death. The thumb-sized jungle venomous mosquitoes flew in the air, holding up their huge and ferocious mouthparts, looking for fresh food sources. Outside the swamp wetland, animal bones were half covered by fallen leaves, and the ferocious and brutal stone-armored monitor lizards bit the belly of the giant horned deer, and then ate it with crocodile-like teeth after opening its belly. The jungle cat demon in the tree canopy held the neck of the ape, and shared the freshly harvested prey with the bloodthirsty tribesmen. From the small red blood ants, that were as small as a fingernail, and were highly poisonous, to the Bonnet upright bears that were as big as tigers and leopards, and liked to eat blood and brains. Every inch of space explained the cruelty of survival, and every minute and every second, life was passing. However, in such a human-restricted area, there are several unrelated humans living in it. Accepting the most cruel test, humans use the most domineering and direct way to explain that they are not meat at the bottom of the food chain, but deadly hunters at the top of the food chain. This method is called killing. The stone-armored monitor lizard scraped the bones with its huge tongue covered with barbs, and put the last bit of meat of the giant horned deer into its mouth. But it didn't know that above the tree canopy, the deadly red venom had dripped onto the venison along the thin branches, and the one holding the thin branches was an indifferent man named Morris, covered with the blood of insect-repellent beasts. Pulling the dagger out of the cat demon's neck, green blood flowed down the thick stem. The stone-armored monitor lizard, which smelled the blood, obviously realized that something was wrong, but after just taking 2 steps, it paused and fell to the ground. The venom of the red blood ant has taken effect. The powerful hunter opened his mouth and wailed and struggled, but the next moment a sharp spear dropped from the sky pierced his skull directly. A stronger smell of blood began to spread, and the roar of the Bonnet upright bear came from afar. Pulling out the spear from the gap in the scales indifferently, picking up the body of the stone-armored monitor lizard, Morris walked away. Mission completed. Everyone, please give me the money in your hands. There will be another recommendation tomorrow. It will be great if I can get more than 2,000 this time. Nico style pitiful. Chapter 41 on the technology of keeping things fair. Lester placed the headquarters of Nightblade in the underground of the inner city. In simple terms, it was in the basement near the door of his house. It may not sound nice, but this is the ultimate pursuit of every citizen of Emerald Territory, to live with the Lord and live in the inner city. Although the walls of the inner city are not even visible now, people with vision know that what the Lord said will come true. In Lester's future plan, the Lord's Castle will become the most magnificent and military significant building in Emerald Territory. In addition, the future War College and Orphanage will be placed in the inner city and become the source of new blood for the elite troops of Emerald Territory. He wants to control everything in Emerald Territory in his own hands, including the most powerful assassination force, Nightblade, which he trained himself. After his death, the descendants of Nightblade will also become Nightblades, continue to obey the orders of the family he founded in secret, guard Emerald Territory for him, and kill any restless factors. Just when Lester came out of the unfinished Nightblade headquarters, a 2-wheeled carriage engraved with the Emerald Territory's unique military symbol, double-winged sword, drove into the territory unimpeded and headed straight to the Lord's mansion, blocking Lester who was about to go home. Seeing the carriage coming from behind, Lester stopped and the carriage stopped with it. Lord Morris, the Lord you are looking for is outside the car. The Shadow Crossbowman member driving the car said and got off the car quickly, saluting Lester. Nodding in response to the somewhat unfamiliar Shadow Crossbowman member, Lester set his sights on the savage who got off the car. Wrapped in an unknown animal skin, with several small goods hanging on his body, short hair, and colorful unknown liquid all over his body, he exuded a strange pungent smell. The spear behind him, and the short dagger at his waist were shining, and it was obvious that he was well maintained. This savage was Morris, who had just returned from the depths of the Silent Forest. The stone-armored giant lizard he hunted had been placed in the secret base set up by the Emerald Lord in the Silent Forest. The stone-armored giant lizard has been killed. Morris asked Lord Lester to arrange a trial mission. Kneeling on one knee, Morris lowered his head. Your aura is restrained, and your killing intent is still there. It is obvious that you have understood the way of survival of an assassin. Without responding to Lester's comments, Morris just lowered his head and said nothing. Go back to the barracks and wait for orders. During this time, you can write down what you have gained in the Silent Forest. These will be kept as confidential information of the Silent Forest. Yes. Watching Morris leave in a carriage, Lester turned and walked towards home. Brother Lester. Asterisk 2. Seeing Lester coming from a distance, Miss Ham exclaimed, and just as she was about to step forward, she found that her sister Hina had already jumped into Lester's arms first. She couldn't help but pout and stood there in a depressed mood. After holding the black-haired girl and spinning around, Lester, who put down Hina, also gave Miss Han an exciting spinning around, trying not to be partial to one and treat the other equally. He didn't want to cause a conflict between the two girls because of his preference, although it can be seen now that the two girls do have differences in character. There are not a few small disputes in daily life. No wonder in the future, angel sisters with different ideas will go their separate ways because of the death of their father and regard each other as enemies. Now it depends on whether I can play the role of a mediator. Miss Hina, why are you here so early today? Lester walked into his mansion, holding the two little girls on the left and right. GC, who went to class, had already prepared fresh fruits for the two little guys to use. Big Brother, Hina made a puppet for Big Brother wearing a grey little skirt. Hina carefully took out a fist-sized wooden sculpture from her small cloth bag and handed it to Lester with both hands with expectation. Although it is ugly, and he carved himself like Morris who just came out of the jungle, it can still be seen that the little guy really put in a lot of effort. Lester also took the small wooden sculpture of Hina with both hands and carefully examined it. The child's heart should not be wasted. Not bad, it's Hina after all. It really looks like her brother. Hina was a little strange, but still looked very happy. But Hina was carved in the shape of a monkey. Hadda, of course my brother is a monkey. Puchy looking at Lester's embarrassed and pretentious appearance, Miss Ha laughed and explained. It's like this, Brother Lester. A few days ago, a group of travelers from the east came to the gate of the village. Some of them raised monkeys and ocelots. They also showed the villagers how to tame animals. The animal show was very beautiful. That night, Sinner decided to carve a monkey puppet for you. Unfortunately, those people disappeared soon. Some people seemed to say that they went to Demacia in the west, but some people said that they suddenly disappeared. So that's the case. Didn't Miss Ha want to make a wooden sculpture for her brother? Hearing this, Miss Ha's fair face suddenly blushed, and she turned her head away quickly with an impatient look. I haven't made a wooden sculpture for Brother Lester. Lester smiled. Since he also gave Miss Ha a swan puppet, Miss Ha would suddenly change her tone when talking to him, acting impatient and indifferent, but he was not a fool. Is that so? Lester's loss was beyond words, and he was in a low mood. This scene made Miss Ha a little panic. No, I actually. She wanted to make it clear, but she couldn't say it. Seeing this, the disappointed Lester suddenly leaned close to Miss Ha's ear and guessed hesitantly. Could it be that little Miss Ha did it, but just didn't do it well? Seeing her lie exposed, Miss Ha lowered her head in embarrassment and said in a low voice, which was considered an admission. Miss Ha is so good to me. Well, it's nothing. It's just a piece of wood. Just cut it with a knife. Seeing her sister and Lester talking endlessly, Zina suddenly felt that the puppet cat in her hand was not interesting anymore and trotted in between the two. Brother Lester, do you have time today? Lester straightened his waist and waved his hand. Brother has time today. Do you two want to go out to play? Let's have a picnic outside at noon. Okay. The two little ones cheered. Then, let's go. Destination Urus Mountains. Oh. PS1. Thanks to the 4 readers, Lee Lemon, Pork Chop Sauce, Light Blooming in Death, and Joshua is 12,138 for their monthly ticket support. Thanks to everyone for their recommendation votes. PS2. Recently, there have been a lot of people urging for updates. Guy seems to be drowned and at a loss. How should I add more chapters? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42, The Beast Tamer of Rockland Plains. In the dungeon of the military camp in Emerald Territory, the light of a torch flickered. Garfield, sitting on a wooden chair, stared blankly ahead, tied tightly with ropes. The blonde girl sitting in front of him was the captain of the Narkson Black Iron Guard in Emerald Territory. If he remembered correctly, her name seemed to be Margaret. No matter how hard he tried to recall, he had no memory of provoking the other party. So why was he in the dungeon? Why did you arrest us? We didn't do anything. How are Greens and the others? You have a lot of questions. It seemed like she smiled, and Garfield looked at her with wide eyes, but found that the other party didn't laugh at all. What a ghost. Where did the laughter he just heard come from? Is this how you entertain guests in Emerald Territory? Margaret drew the dagger from her waist and played with it in her hand without looking at Garfield. Then may I ask, where are the guests from Emerald Territory going? Aren't they going to stay in Emerald Territory? How can we stay in Emerald Territory? We are going to Demacia. You have no right to detain us. Garfield roared loudly, as if this could increase his strength and courage, and overwhelm the imposing Narkson woman in front of him. Guests going to Demacia, what good guests. With a clang, Margaret put the dagger back to her waist, stood up from the wooden chair, and leaned towards the middle-aged man 5 meters away. A group of animal trainers from Rockland Plains, going to Demacia to play in the mud together? Well, it's a good trip. Garfield's face suddenly turned pale, and he realized that something was wrong, and couldn't help but change the subject. Actually, we are just passing through Demacia, and will eventually take a boat to the west coast, to return to Rockland Plains. Are you still quibbling? Unfortunately, your face betrays you. The snow in Freljord is not as white as your face, but your mouth is harder than the walls of the immortal bastion. It seems that I have to find some siege equipment. What are you going to do? The voice that was fierce on the outside, but weak on the inside, did not have any effect. Taking down the burning resin torch from the wall, Margaret lit the torch on the other side herself. The fire illuminated the dark dungeon, but it did not bring any sense of security to Garfield. Instead, it made Garfield's bladder relax, and yellow liquid dripped from his trouser legs. A foul smell spread from the dungeon, but Margaret remained calm and just spoke in a cold voice. Oh, your courage is not as good as your words. The second torch illuminated the torture table in the dark. Various hideous torture instruments were neatly placed on the table. Even the stone brick walls were hung with hooks and iron chains. The bloodstains on the walls and floor tiles exuded a terrifying atmosphere in the dim firelight. Picking up a thin iron spike about 10 centimeters long from the torture table, Margaret walked in front of Garfield with an expressionless face and pinched the middle-aged man's thumb. I think I should talk to you in another way. Let's start from here. Wow. No. Lady Margaret. I'll tell you everything. Seeing that the iron spike was about to pierce into his fingernails, Garfield collapsed. Putting down the iron spike, Margaret nodded to the silent recorder in the dark and said lightly, "Go ahead. I won't ask you anything. You can say whatever you want to say. Remember, I will only give you one chance to speak. If what you say does not satisfy me, I will stuff your mouth with a shroud and test your willpower on you first." Garfield said slowly with a sad face. "We are the Kulsala people living in the Rockland Plain. We have been herding since childhood. Half a month ago, a merchant ship from Shurima to Demacia passed through Rockland. There were many Demacia merchants on the ship. They brought fresh fruits, spices and sophisticated weapons to the coastal city of Bergen in Shurima, and took away Shurima's mammoth wool, jewelry and healthy wandering people from Bergen. They stopped the ship in the harbor of Rockland, and exchanged many domesticated livestock with our tribe. We also obtained some good mammoth wool, but unfortunately all the wool was taken away by the elders and the chief." After carefully looking at the terrible woman, Garfield did not dare to hesitate, for fear that the woman would take out a shroud from behind to stuff her mouth. On the merchant ship, there was a big Demacia merchant named Vandal who said that if there were experienced animal trainers going to Demacia, they could get very good treatment and become guests of honor as long as they reported his name. After they left, I gathered a few companions who also had animal training experience and formed a travel caravan. We successfully crossed the Valoran Mountains and walked along the Narkson border in the name of a trade group. We ate beef jerky and sang ballads as we crossed the Valoran Plains. Then, we came here, and I was inexplicably captured by you. When I woke up, I didn't even know where I was. After hesitating for a moment, and finding that Margaret still had a cold look on her face, Garfield could only bite the bullet and continue. "We have a lot of livestock over there. Most of them are domesticated. There are sheep, goats, wild boars, some spotted cows, and some gray pigeons used for sending messages. Gray pigeons are very useful and delicious, but they are difficult to tame. If you eat one, you will be beaten by the chief. Well, I don't have a wife or children, but maybe I will have one soon. The chief of Kursala has 3 wives and 2 children. His name is Makerhad. The chief is called Boris, who has 2 wives and 1 child, and the child is from the eldest wife. The second wife, Stana, hasn't given birth yet. She thinks that without a child, she will be bullied by Boris's eldest wife. So she found me one night and said she wanted to try it with me. I tried it with her, and there is no result yet, but Stana's belly might be big when we go back this time. Didn't that Demacia merchant named Vanda tell you that he asked you to go to Demacia to tame some animals?" Hearing Margaret taking the initiative to ask him a question, Garfield breathed a sigh of relief and his face looked much better. He didn't say it, but I've heard from other Dalmatians that there are dragon birds and wyverns in the Urus Mountains in the north of Dalmatia. I don't think the Dalmatians are crazy enough to subdue and tame the terrible wyverns, so it can only be dragon birds. We also have some reliable ideas about those flying birds, which is why we have the motivation to go to Dalmatia to fight. My lord, this is just my guess. I can't guarantee it's true. Chapter 43 The Blonde Girl Who Can't Smile. Sure enough, those beast tamers were hired by the Dalmatians to tame dragon birds. On the first floor of the Lord's mansion, Lester knocked on the table, narrowing his eyes and thinking. In order to report to Lester about Garfield and other beast tamers, Margaret gave herself a short vacation. She wanted to change into a nicer outfit, but found that she had no other clothes, except iron armor and Narxan cloth armor, so she just wore them. Lord Lester, what should we do with those Cursula people? Secretly looking at the man's face, the girl always felt that she had a lot of things to say in private, but after speaking, she found that she had nothing to say except official business. She was just an ordinary follower, just one of the more outstanding soldiers among the many Emerald Territory soldiers. Compared with Lord Lester's wife, Lady Rose, her skin was rough, and she was ugly. A year ago, she could still smile in front of Lord Lester, but now she has forgotten how to smile. That's all. The girl lowered her head expressionlessly. Since they are here, let them stay for now. Dragon birds also appear in the Urus Mountains in the north of Emerald Territory. When our people have completed the intelligence collection on the dragon bad nests, they will be useful. Perhaps the stone-armored giant lizards in the south can also be tamed. Now let them live in the dungeon with trepidation, reduce food rations, and do not tell them our true purpose. Let them choose to join us out of fear. When they show enough obedience, we will improve their living environment. Understood, then. Lord Lester, I will leave first. Nodding in agreement, the girl stood up and turned to leave. Margaret, although you look very cool in armor, you still have to wear some girl's clothes on weekdays. The girl was stunned for a moment, turned around with some confusion, and saw Lester's gentle and sunny smile. Wait a moment, I'll ask Miss Trissy to order a dress and leather boots for you. I designed them myself. You can try them on and see if they fit you. If not, I'll take them back and modify them. The girl stared blankly at the man as he left until he came downstairs and stood in front of her again. A square bag made of wild boar skin had appeared in her hand. Open it and take a look. I don't know if you like it or not. Her consciousness was a little stagnant and her body seemed to have lost itself. The girl just subconsciously opened the bag with the same instinct as obeying a military order. Inside the wooden box, a pleated knee-length white dress was quietly sleeping inside. She opened the wooden box and found a pair of black mid-cut leather boots on the bottom layer of the box. It was just exactly the same as what I dreamed of. Is this for me? Margaret, with a blank look in her eyes, gently unfolded the skirt and looked at the smiling Lester. She looked a little dazed. Go upstairs and change. I'll wait for you here. Accompany me to the southern mining area today and relax. Otherwise, it's not good for your body to be tense every day. Yes. Holding her skirt, she subconsciously saluted Narcissus. Amid the man's chuckle, the girl tightened her red face and walked upstairs with a stiff step that didn't recognize anyone. She found a room with a mirror and went in, closing the door. The relaxed girl realized that she hadn't taken a shower yet, and wearing this beautiful new dress would dirty her clothes. However, Lord Lester's orders could not be disobeyed. At this time, Lester's voice came from downstairs. Put it on. Clothes are made to be worn by people. Or, I can help you take a bath here. I'm very good at scrubbing people's backs. Margaret, you. Yes. Okay, I'll go up now. Let's take a bath. No, I mean, I can put on clothes. I'll wait for you. Feeling her head was a mess, the dizzy girl began to become clumsy. The armor that she was familiar with seemed like a strange object that she had never touched before, and she couldn't take it off. Calm down. Calm down. Using Professor Lester's combat skills and recalling her experience of beheading the enemy, the girl adjusted her disordered breathing and finally relaxed a little and successfully took off the armor and the battle skirt. Smelling the faint sweat odor on her body, the girl realized how unhygienic she was usually. It seems that she needs to take a bath more frequently in the future. After studying for a long time, the girl clumsily put on the skirt and changed into handsome black leather boots. Standing in front of the bright bronze mirror, the bright-eyed girl found that her hairstyle did not match her outfit at all. The curly and wild medium-length blonde hair looked as shabby and ugly as a refugee. Before joining the army, she had kept her hair short for training. Over the past year, she had cut her hair several times, but it still grew very fast and became so long again in the blink of an eye. Using her fingers to gather her messy hair, Margaret looked at the wooden comb placed in front of the bronze mirror and found that she seemed to not know how to comb her hair, and it seemed inappropriate to use someone else's comb at will. Thinking of this, the girl began to be dazed again. Dong dong dong, how is it? Have you changed your clothes? Did you encounter any difficulties? Margaret stood up from the stool with a start and responded honestly. I'm dressed, but my hair is a little messy. Pushing open the door, Lester looked at the girl in front of him with a flash of surprise in his eyes. Although it was obvious that the blonde girl had a good foundation, a resolute and cold nature, and the murderous spirit honed in the battle, she would definitely be radiant if she dressed up properly, but I didn't expect the effect to be so good. Don't panic, I'll help you comb your hair. The girl blushed and sat down obediently with Lester holding her bare shoulders. This skirt seems to be a bit too revealing. Why are the shoulders exposed? Taking the comb, looking at the girl's messy and dry hair, Lester opened the drawer and took out Rose's water element conditioner. Isn't it your wife's stuff, isn't it? There is no need to hesitate. Unscrewing the cap of the purple crystal bottle, Lester poured the bottle and ripped a drop on the girl's head. The moment the conditioner touched the hair, a magical ripple flashed, and the cool and wet feeling enveloped the scalp. The dry hair was instantly filled with water element, and the dirt was swept away by the water waves. The blonde hair became soft, moist, smooth and bright. Looking at the magical scene in the mirror, although she had seen Ms. Meredith casting spells before, the girl was still a little surprised that magic could be so convenient. Magic is not just for fighting. Come, let me dress you up. Chapter 44, Inspecting the Mine. After combing her hair, Lester tied a simple ponytail for the girl, and then used a light pink magic lipstick to apply on her lips. Finally, he applied a little magician's skin cream on her face, making her rough skin become extremely moisturized. Grey mist eyes, small and straight nose, attractive pink lips, spiritual ears, shallow arc. After finishing the makeup, Margaret stared blankly at the big-eyed blonde beauty with half-closed lips in the bronze mirror and pointed at the strange girl in the bronze mirror stupidly. Is this me? The voice came out, and then the girl saw that the beauty in the bronze mirror had an incredible expression. This is you, Margaret. After putting Rose's cosmetics back to their original position and making sure that the rotation angle of the bottle cap was the same as before, Lester closed the drawer. You are a very beautiful girl, but you don't pay attention to dressing and maintenance. You have to trust my vision, my general. Margaret stood up from the stool awkwardly, looking at herself in the mirror, who had completely changed her ace. Her movement subconsciously softened a little, no longer as careless and resolute as before. Lord Lester. Lester smiled as he patted the girl's shoulder. My great general, can you accompany me to inspect the southern mining area? Yes. After punching herself hard on the chest, Margaret realized that she was not wearing armor now. Fortunately, the punch did not hit anything, but it only hurt a little. You don't have to salute me today, just relax and treat yourself as an ordinary person, okay? Okay. Before the establishment of the Emerald Territory, the Mombians discovered a total of 2 natural mines in the Nokmachi Plain, one at the foot of the Urus Mountains in the north, and the other at the shimmering Silver Mountains in the south. After the establishment of the Emerald Territory, the 2 mines were naturally inherited by the Emerald Territory. Due to insufficient population, insufficient labor force, and the war workshop being built in the south, Emerald Territory chose to give priority to mining in the southern mining area of the Shine Silver Mountains. Every day, the people of Emerald Territory pick up their own mining tools and food from outside the mine pit, and mine minerals in the mines, reinforced with stone pillars or wooden beams by senior miners and construction craftsmen. Under Lester's orders, the safety of miners was put first, so you can see oil lamps made of insulating materials everywhere in the shallow mines. Miners were also told that it was absolutely forbidden to mine minerals in unreinforced or unexplored areas, or to light open flames in the mines at will. Once discovered, the lighter ones would be permanently deprived of the qualification to go to the mines, and the more serious ones would be expelled from Emerald Territory. Those who cause harm to others would be directly imprisoned. As for the deeper mines, Lester was not going to send people to mine without exploration and sufficient mining equipment. After all, the various minerals in the shallow mines alone were enough for the current Emerald Territory to develop for more than 10 years. In the end, the main problem of Emerald Territory is that there is not enough labor force. Supporting refugees to join and encouraging the people to have more children are the most important things. For this reason, Lester is also working hard, but for some reason, the women's stomachs have not moved. It seems that they have to expand the scale. Soon, Lester and Margaret took a carriage to the southern mining area, which was marked as the mining site of mine number 1. Lord. The Narcan Black Iron Guard soldier guarding the mine entrance saluted Lester, and then looked at the expressionless beautiful woman behind Lester with a puzzled look. Why do I feel a little familiar? Wait, is this strange woman threatening me? Why do I feel cold? Go and call the person in charge of the mine site. Yes. The aggrieved soldier withdrew his puzzled look and turned away without daring to say or ask. Soon, a smart middle-aged man with a mustache and exquisite clothes trotted over, bowed to Lester, and spoke respectfully. My lord, are you going to inspect the mine today? Billister, take me to the latest stable point of the mine. Okay, my lord. Passing through the large warehouse built beside the mine, nodding to the soldiers guarding the warehouse, the three of them walked into the dark mine. The torch at the entrance of the cave was burning, and the mine tunnel visible to the naked eye began to become wide and complex. The wooden beam support point was against the top of the cave, and there were many traces of pickaxes and hoes mining around. The three walked deep into the mine. Tell me about the recent mineral production. It is mainly iron ore, supplemented by copper and tin ore. Under the order of the Lord, the silver mine in the depths has not been mined yet. The daily output of iron ore is about 3.4 units. 1 unit is equivalent to the output of 10 adult men working normally in a rich mining area for a day. Copper ore is 1.8 units, and tin ore is 1.3 units. After meeting the smelting needs of the war workshop, there are currently 125 units of iron ore, 95 units of copper ore, and 120 units of tin and other ores, including quartz, sulfide, mica, pyroxene, etc., in the mineral material warehouse. Has there been any accidents recently? Lord, there is no big problem, but a middle-aged miner named Butte did not come back from the third branch mine tunnel last night and seemed to be missing. I organized people to search for him in the third branch mine tunnel yesterday, but unfortunately he was not found. The search team is still looking for the missing gut. Missing? As they were talking, the three had arrived at the middle working area. Dozens of miners were divided into groups in different areas. Under the light of oil lamps, they used iron picks and hammers to hit hard stones. Most of the broken stones were ordinary stones, and a small amount of hematite with red spots was picked up by the miners and placed in wooden backpacks beside them. When the backpacks were full, or when the working time came, the miners would leave with the backpacks and deliver the ore to the ore warehouse. In the eyes of Lester, who was used to modern large industrial mining machines, such work efficiency was shockingly low, but according to the current mining technology of Emerald Territory, this was already a very high efficiency, unless the wizard used magical magic to mine, which was impossible. My lord, I don't think this is a big problem. After all, there have been cases of miners getting lost before, but they were eventually found by the search team because they got lost. Go 2 more forks ahead, and you will reach the latest support point. That is also the third branch of the mine where Gut disappeared. The road conditions are extremely complicated. Thank you for the monthly ticket support from readers of Love Night Sorrow, and thank you for your recommendation tickets. Are there many readers who are raising books recently? I feel that there are suddenly fewer people today, and Hanga is a little panicked. Chapter 45 The Missing Miner. There are no small problems when it comes to human lives. We must see the bodies of the dead and the alive. We need to summarize the experience of the accident. In the mine, no matter what the problem is, we cannot be vague and fooled. We must do a good job in training miners in the future. We must draw a mine map with animal skins, or make some obvious wayfinding signs. We must let the miners confirm their positions more clearly. Lord, I understand. I will start preparing as soon as I go back today. Looking at the man in front of him who was extremely respectful to him, Lester nodded. Billist, a Mombian, is still very capable. He knows how to count and has the ability to control his subordinates. He is perfect for controlling the mines in the shimmering Silver Mountains. 10 minutes later, after passing several forks in the road, the terrain extended downwards and suddenly became a little steep. There were many hollows and bottomless pits on the ground. Compared with the previous mine tunnel, there were obviously fewer support beams here. At this moment, more than a dozen construction workers were carrying several new wooden beams to stand on the ground, connecting the cave floor and the top with broken rock nails and lime mud. My lord, this is the third branch of the mine tunnel, which we opened up the day before yesterday. It is currently in the reinforcement stage. Now the miners are working in the previous mine tunnel. I don't know why that gut came here alone. Hey, Joey, how is the work here going? Hearing the voice, a bearded man wearing wear-resistant coarse linen work clothes straightened up, looked back, trotted up to the three people, took off his miner's hat and saluted. My lord and lady, are you well? Lord Ballista, the terrain here is extremely complex, with many tunnels and many pits and holes, which are extremely dangerous. In addition to the need to lay down 8 wooden beams and 3 stone pillars, the holes on the ground need to be filled with lime mud. The third wooden beam is currently being laid down. Hearing this dusty middle-aged bearded man addressing her as lady, Margaret was unusually a little embarrassed. She glanced at Lester in front of her quietly. After finding that Lester did not deny it, she seemed to have thought of something, and her face was as red as a steamed lobster. Fortunately, it was too dark in the depths of the mine, and no one saw this. Is there any news about Rupert and the others? Reporting to the Lord, no one from Foreman Rupert's search team has returned. Frowning, Ballista sensed something wrong. Didn't they go in this morning? No one has come out yet? Didn't I tell him to send someone out every once in a while to report safety? What did he take my words for? Did he ignore them? Okay, Ballista, being angry won't solve any problems. I'm sorry, Lord, I lost my temper. I was just a little angry when I thought that I had clearly told Rupert, but he still acted on his own. Waving his hand to indicate that Ballista, who looked apologetic, didn't need to worry, Lester looked at Joey, the builder. You mean, the search team went deeper into the mine from here and haven't come back yet? Turning to look at Lester, Joey, the craftsman, nodded and explained. Lord Ballista is right. Rupert should have sent someone up to report safety. There are 5 people in the search team, so there shouldn't be no one available. He took out a well-made brass hourglass from his enamel skin waste bag. In the light of the flame, Joey squinted his eyes and confirmed the time. It's about noon now, Lord. Even if we can't find Gut, Rupert should come out for lunch according to his usual habits. Take me to the entrance of the mine on the next level. Okay, please follow me, and be sure to pay attention to the hole under your feet. Picking up a torch from the rock wall, Joey explained to prevent Lester from misunderstanding that he had made a mistake. There is no coal or other fuel minerals on this level, so there is no need to worry about open flames. I understand. You lead the way. Yes. Following behind Lester and others, as if she had really become a lord's wife, Margaret no longer had a tense face and carefully experienced the new and strange feeling she had never had before. Carefully stepping over a few inconspicuous small pits, she followed the crowd for dozens of meters and came to a corner. Margaret set her sights on the entrance of a black cave that went vertically downwards. With the light from the torch in Joey's hand, the girl looked down. Below the black cave, there are intermittent broken rock layers as tall as an adult, no longer the continuous rock slope surface before. In other words, going down from this layer requires considerable climbing ability, but such a change is a bit too abrupt. At first glance, these square stones seem to have been deliberately dug with tools. The black cave swallowed by the firelight seems a bit eerie and quiet. Nothing can be seen clearly below. It is pitch black. We didn't find this place before. It was originally blocked by a big rock. It was not until the round boulder collapsed the nearby loose rocks due to its own weight that it rolled down and exposed this bit. Have you organized people to go down and take a look? My lord, we just found this cave not long ago and we haven't organized people to go down and check it out. This time, it was because of Gut's disappearance that Foreman Rupert led the search team to look for him. At this point, Joey hurriedly added, fearing that his lord would decide to go down to explore without thinking. Lord, let's not go down now. Not to mention that the road is not easy to walk on. The most important thing is that we lack the necessary tools, including climbing ropes, miners' climbing claws, or fully enclosed oil lamps. It will be very dangerous for us to go down without these tools. Nodding, Lester hadn't said anything before a scream came from the next level of the black cave, followed by the sound of tiny footsteps that made people's scalps numb, and the squeaks of countless rats. The terrible sound became louder and louder. It's Rupert. He's down there. Rupert, how are you? Grabbing the craftsman Joey who had just persuaded him not to go down, Lester's eyes swept over the pale Ballista and the calm Margaret, snatched Joey's torch, and threw it directly down. The torch rolled and fell on the intermittent rock platforms and rolled to the deepest part. Lester looked closely and estimated that the depth was about 20 meters. Less than 2 seconds after landing, the cotton torch wrapped in animal fat and vegetable oil began to burn violently, and then a staggering man screamed and approached the torch, climbing madly towards the steep rock platform. Chapter 46 The Evil Underground Visitor. He is Gerald, a miner in Rupert's search team. Ballista trembled and pointed out the man under the black cave, and then he heard the Lord's majestic and steady voice. Joey, quickly find a long enough rope, tie one end to the fixed stone pillar, and bring the other end back. I will use the rope to pull people. Ballista, quickly organize the rest of the people in this level of the mine. Pile up the unfixed wooden beams at the entrance of this mine. Bring the torches and oil lamps on the wall, and send someone to notify all the Narcs and Black Iron Guards and Black Rose Mages stationed in the mining area to come to support. And then you, and a few people will wait for my order at the entrance, ready to light, and block the passage at any time. Yes. Ballista, who received the order, turned around and greeted others without saying a word. Joey was still hesitantly looking at Gerald who was climbing up with difficulty. Just as he was about to say something, he saw the Lord's wife, who was gentle and quiet just now, grab his collar and stare at him coldly with grey misty eyes. Do as Lord Lester tells you. Joey's legs went limp, and he rolled away. Margaret, wait here and get ready to pick me up with a long rope. Watching Gerald climbing up with difficulty, Lester rolled down amid Margaret's exclamation. But before he could roll down the 2 platforms, the sound of metal bowstring shooting came from the darkness. A short, thick dark red crossbow arrow cut through the air, stuck into the thick rock wall close to Gerald's face, splashing out a piece of fine pebbles and scratching the miner's cheek. Wow. Gerald, if you don't want to die, move quickly. I'm here. Gerald was completely desperate, but he suddenly heard a familiar voice and couldn't help but look up. In a trance, he saw a familiar face. Lord, save me. I will save you. Keep climbing up. Biting his lip, the taste of rust penetrated his throat. The desire to survive activated Jared's movements much faster. The torch at the bottom was completely extinguished. The rat's slow squeaking sound was getting closer and closer, as if there were endless rats in the darkness approaching the 3 people quickly. Swoosh, swoosh. 2 more crossbow arrows shot at Jared. One of them missed and flew into the depths of darkness. The other crossbow arrow accurately shot into Jared's chest, bringing out a handful of blood, piercing a bloody hole in Jared's chest, and biting hard on the stone wall. Lord, big. The words that had not yet been spoken, froze in his chest, and could no longer be said. The eyes that were looking at hope quickly lost their luster. The miner's body was hung on the rock wall by the crossbow arrow, and his life withered. The dripping blood fell from the air and ripped on the ground, telling the last elegy of life and death. taking his eyes off Jared's body and looking into the darkness. The man's eyes turned completely cold. Lord, here comes the rope. Lord Lester, catch the rope. Swish, swish, swish. 3 crossbow arrows shot upward from 3 different directions. Lester quickly crawled on the ground, avoiding the first 2 arrows that flew, and shot into the rock walls on both sides. The last arrow seemed to be at a wrong angle, so it did not pierce into the rock wall, but scraped the rock wall and directly cut it apart, falling from the air. Before falling into the darkness, Lester held it in his hand. Grabbing the rope and pinning the 4-arm-long crossbow arrow to his waist, Lester quickly alternated his hands and climbed upward. Squeak, squeak. The mice's chirping became louder and louder. Another crossbow arrow flew behind him, but he could only vent his dissatisfaction powerlessly behind Lester, making small pits on the rock wall. Climbing up the black cave, pushing away Margaret who wanted to block him, dodging several crossbow arrows flying in front of him, Lester took the torch from Joey again and threw it directly into the depths of darkness. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The torches flying in the air emitted dim light, and the arcs of light slowly cut through the darkness, illuminating pairs of red and bloodthirsty eyes. There were hundreds of red-skinned rats the size of children, wearing simple dark leather armor, holding short knives emitting dark blood light, and strange-shaped crossbows shining with metallic luster in their hands. The arrows of the crossbow arrows were like the cruel eyes of the bloodthirsty rats, emitting evil dark red light. Squeak. The torches that fell to the ground were extinguished instantly, and hundreds of pairs of dark red light spots disappeared from the darkness. Only the harsh sound from the rock wall told that the metal claws were deeply piercing the solid rock wall at this moment, climbing up with their evil masters. Swing the knife to cut the rope. Run. Don't stop. Don't look back. Picking up a few more fallen crossbow bolts from the ground, Lester dragged Margaret towards the entrance. My lord, wait for me. Joey also saw the terrible evil in the depths of the darkness, and his legs were weak as he followed the 2 people running out. The 3 of them came to the entrance of the 3rd branch mine tunnel. Next to several tall wooden beams, Billist was holding a torch with sweat on his forehead, leading 3 other miners who were holding oil lamps and showing fear. Throw the oil lamp on the wood and light it with the torch. The glass broke, and the oil soaked on the surface of the wooden beams, and emitted a unique smell. Following the crowd's retreat, Billist threw away the torch in his hand, and the flames quickly ignited the stacked wooden beams, and a raging fire started. Retreat. Just as everyone left, a squeak that followed them came from the other side of the raging fire, and was briefly blocked behind the wall of fire. The jar flew through the air and hit the burning wooden beam. The broken jar spilled out a strange green juice, which quickly suppressed the burning flames. When retreating to the entrance of the 2nd branch mine tunnel, Lester encountered a dozen narcs and black iron guards and 2 black rose mages who were rushing towards him. Lester, who originally wanted to let the black iron guards fight against unknown enemies, had to give up this somewhat arbitrary idea after seeing the true face of the enemy. If there is anything more terrifying than the number of red-skinned rats and the strange weapons in their hands, it is the organization reflected in the clear division of labor. Although he only glanced at it in the afterglow of the torch, he also saw the terrible organization hidden under the manic rat group. Without organization, it would be a bunch of violent rats that could be easily wiped out. However, the fact is that this group of mutant rats acted very measuredly. The climbing rat was responsible for building the lock and hanging wooden ladder, and the melee rats held shields and knives to guard in front of the crossbow rats. The crossbow rats shot crossbow arrows to cover the attack of the rest of the rats. There is no doubt that the red-skinned rats under the ground are a terrifying army with clear arms. To destroy an army, not only another army and key battlefield intelligence are needed, but also a real war. A killing between armies. Chapter 47 Narxus. No one is left behind. Billista, there is no entrance to the 3rd branch mine tunnel except here, right? Looking at the frightened Joey, Billista shook his head in fear. My lord, there is only this exit to the 3rd mine tunnel. Nodding, Lester looked at the 2 mages. Can you 2 use magic to completely seal this cave entrance? Looking at the passage, that was about 3 square meters in size, the 2 black rose mages nodded, and one of them said, My lord Lester, we can use rock magic to seal the cave entrance. It won't take much time. How long will it take? I need an exact number. After hesitating for a while, the male mage spoke. 1 minute is enough. Start now, as fast as possible. Understood. Concentrating the magic power in their bodies, the two mages began to chant spells, and waves of earth element magic rippled out, like malt in early spring poking out of the ground. Under the illusory yellow magic, the magic element symbolizing earth and stone began to vibrate and extend upward from the ground. In the invisible magic field, a magic circle was slowly running. Turning around, Lester said to Margaret, "Margaret, go gather the Black Iron Guards, Shadow Crossbowmen and Black Rose Mages. If we can't defend this place, we need to defend the mine entrance on the surface." Yes. After the blonde girl turned and ran away, everyone present realized that the beautiful lady of the Lord who followed the Lord without saying a word was the Narkson Black Iron Guard Arndemonis. Joe, I was the most terrified. The rest of you, evacuate here quickly. Narkson Black Iron Guards, line up in front, protect the mages, and prepare to meet the enemy. Yes. Joe and Ballista left quickly. Lester drew out a spare dagger of the Narkson Black Iron Guards, held it horizontally in front of him, and said coldly, "The enemy is hundreds of red-skinned rats, armed with powerful crossbows and sharpened hard short knives. Those holding iron shields are in front, and those holding spears are behind. They use shields to resist crossbow arrows, keep as much distance as possible, and kill the rats with spears." Seeing that the earth and stone had grown to half the height of the cave entrance, the wizard shouted, "Lord, bring people out quickly. The cave entrance will be closed soon." Squeak, squeak, squeak. The sound of the rats approached quickly. If the soldiers withdraw now, this wall will be attacked before it is completed. Can it be blocked? Lord Lester, I'm afraid not. Magic can only be completely transformed from elemental energy into matter after it is completely completed. Whether it is unformed magic or the wizard himself, if he is not careful, it will be lost after being attacked. As soon as the wizard's words fell, the numbing sound of rats came from the darkness. He glanced at the Narkson Black Iron Guard in front of him with complicated eyes, closed his eyes, and issued the last order. "Narkson Black Iron Guards, listen to my orders. Stay here and stop the enemy." Several soldiers' legs trembled, and they almost couldn't hold their weapons. Several soldiers looked at each other with bitter smiles and sighed deeply. Some soldiers turned their heads and smiled at Lester. "My lord, my name is Sweet. I leave my mother to you. My lord Lester, it's my honor to follow you. I don't have any family, so it's good this way. My lord, I'm a little scared. Can you give me a hug?" Facing the faces that were either reluctant, fearful, or respectful, Lester came to the girl who was 2 heads shorter than him, gently hugged the trembling girl, and calmed the girl down a little. "What's your name? How old are you this year?" "My lord Lester, you don't have much time." Squeak, squeak. The girl's voice was a little immature. "My name is Alice, lord. I'm 16 years old. I just passed the test of the Black Iron Guard and won the first place among my peers. Because I have no combat experience, I was assigned to the mining area. My biggest dream is to become your sword, lord, and cut through the thorns for you. Finally, my dream has finally come true." Lester smiled and touched the girl's head, kissed her forehead gently, and said softly, "Are you still afraid?" The girl was a little shy with a red face, but still shook her head. "I'm not afraid now, lord. Please go over quickly. Just leave it to me." "Lord Lester, hurry up. The magic is about to take shape." Swoosh. The balance between life and death began to tilt, and the weight of death suddenly increased. 2 crossbow arrows flew from the darkness and pierced the stone wall at the corner. Some soldiers roared to give themselves courage, some cried and sang, and some gritted their teeth and held the weapons in their hands tightly. They were very scared. None of them fled. They were ready to die. Lester let go of the girl named Alice. The organization, his former home, always did this. When it was time to give up, the children and the family would be abandoned, and they would die without regrets and willingly. He wanted to become someone else's home. He became someone else's home, and he also let others do this for him, and let others die for him. This is home. This is family. Lester turned around, and his vision was a little blurry in the darkness. Then, a pair of unforgettable memories of his past life surged from the depths of his body. He finally passed through the illusory magic light curtain. In the stunned expressions of the mages, he tripped 2 mages, causing them to fall stupidly. He picked up the only remaining oil lamp hanging on the rock wall and slammed it hard on the wooden frame bracket of the mine tunnel, allowing the kerosene to ignite the wooden frame. The spell was interrupted, the light curtain that was about to take shape disappeared, and the cave entrance returned to its original state, with only the burning wooden door frame burning fiercely. Lester took a deep breath. He was still the Lord, and the territory was no longer his original home. He wanted to build a different home. Narcs and Black Iron Guards, listen up. Retreat to the surface. The rats attacked, and heard the roar of the Lord from behind. The dozen soldiers who were suppressed by the crossbows and were about to rush up to hold the enemy were stunned. The next second, the soldiers responded loudly with roars. Yes. One by one, the soldiers passed through the fire gate symbolizing life and fanatically followed Lester, who was running away with a confused mage in the front. Behind the fire gate, the deep darkness and the evil red light were blocked by the fire gate. One by one, the black earthenware jars hit the door frame again, and the green water hissed. The flames were suppressed and quickly extinguished. There was no one in the mine tunnel. Lester, who had inspected the mine more than once, easily recognized the way to the surface. Setting fire and running all the way, the 2 mages finally recovered from their shock and joined the ranks of Arson. If they had previously obeyed the Lord, only because of the orders of Ms. Meredith and Ms. Rose, the 2 who were forced to interrupt their spell casting and suffered backlash were now willing to truly follow this young man. Even a cold heart that longs for black magic hopes to get closer to the warm firelight. As long as you have experienced the warmth of the sun, no one will dislike the sun. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, who would be willing to be given up? Lester successfully led everyone to the surface. He knew that he didn't have much time. What we need is war. An upright war. Outside the mine, Margaret, wearing a white dress, stood at the front with a long sword in her hand and a grim face. Hundreds of Narcs and Black Iron Guards and shadow crossbowmen lined up in silence. Lester was a little embarrassed, but still dignified, standing straight. A dozen Narcs and Black Iron Guards quickly returned to the team. We can make sacrifices, but sacrifices only happen on the battlefield. He walked over with great enthusiasm, turned his body to face the burning mine, and the evil voice in the mine was approaching like a frenzy. The man in front of the crowd drew out his sword. His voice was calm, and his will was like steel. Narxus, after today, there will be no more slayers. No more abandoned people. Follow me to unsheath my sword. We can't live together. Then we will die together. Behind the man, the soldiers were solemn. Their weapons were unsheathed, their arrows were on the strings, and the murderer Sora was soaring to the sky. Kill. 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 Daily votes, monthly votes or recommendation votes are all fine. Thank you, Shenai England, for the monthly vote, and thank you, Imol for the reward. The investment has finally reached 70, and it is only 30 away from further promotion. Can you guys help to click on the investment? Chapter 48 Defensive Battle. The veterans are in front, the new recruits are in the back. The sword and shield soldiers are in front. The spearmen are in the back holding their spears to resist the enemy. The shadow crossbowmen are free to shoot the enemy's long-range shooters, and the mages cast spells to protect the front. The entrance to the mine is very narrow. We can win, as long as we hold here. Margaret, you take over the command. Yes. After Lester determined the strategic guidelines, Margaret began to lay out according to the strategic guidelines. Military orders are like mountains. Before they could be surprised that their cold-blooded superiors had turned into bright blonde beauty, the soldiers of the Narcs and Black Iron Guard moved quickly under the command of Margaret. Orders were quickly issued one after another. Although the army formation was a little chaotic due to the large number of new recruits, they quickly found their positions under the guidance of the veterans. The fire in the mine suddenly went out, and the unknown liquid hissed. Every soldier clenched his weapons in his hands. They didn't even know what they were going to face. Attention. The enemy is a group of evil underground rats. The crossbows of the rats are extremely powerful. The swords may be poisoned. Sword and shield soldiers should use iron shields to protect the vital parts of their bodies. Meredith. The square-faced female mage quickly came to Lester's side and saluted respectfully. Lord Lester. Do you mages have magic that can be used for long-term lighting and can also kill enemies on a large scale? After taking a look at the dark mine, Meredith instantly understood what Lester meant. I think bone erosion flame should be able to meet your requirements. After the spell is generated, as long as the enemy is contaminated by the flame, it will automatically ignite itself until it turns into green bone powder, but it takes a long time to construct the spell. Hearing this, Lester frowned. There is no doubt that this is a terrible black magic. Is it easy to clean up after the battle? Will it affect the environment of the mine? The flame will disappear after it goes out, and it will not affect the environment of the mine. Lester was relieved. You should start preparing now, and then we will cast the spell directly in the mine. Yes. The female mage sat cross-legged, muttering something, and took out a handful of dark green soil from her arms and threw it into the air. The magic power gushing out from her fingertips quickly spread along the green soil in the air, and the light green magic flame ignited from the soil. A magic symbol engraved in ancient Valoran gradually formed, and the obscure and complicated array was constructed out of thin air in the elemental world. As always, there was no way to see anything. Lester took his eyes off Meredith and came to the army formation, looking at the mine cave that had quieted down with a calm face. The scalp-numbing squeaking sound had disappeared, and the dark mine cave seemed to have returned to its previous calm state at this moment, but no one would be naive to think that the mine cave was now empty. Inside and outside the cave, it fell into an unsettling silence for a short time. The next moment, without any warning, the stagnant cave was filled with the whistling sound of crossbow arrows piercing the air. Margaret yelled with her eyes fixed. "Shield soldiers, defend. The rest of you, keep your bodies down." Dozens of sword and shield soldiers in the front row propped up the iron shields on their left arms and lowered their bodies. Most of the spearmen interspersed between the sword and shield soldiers crouched, following the sword and shield soldiers in front of them. Dozens of red-headed crossbow arrows pierced straight into the thin iron shields. Amid the hissing of metal, they struggled to poke their heads out from the inside of the iron shields and got stuck between the iron shields that were about to break. The sword and shield soldiers, whose faces changed greatly, were knocked back a step, but were held up by the spearmen behind them with their bodies, so that they did not fall. There were still a dozen spearmen who were not able to react in time, or who were not lucky enough, and sword and shield soldiers who were not strong enough, who were pierced by the red arrows, and fell on the spot. The crossbow arrows with extremely strong penetration even brought the sword and shield soldiers behind them, who were blocked by the new iron shields. The Narcs and Black Iron Guards, who had never experienced such terrible weapons, suddenly became agitated, and many recruits showed fear on their faces. Hold the formation. The magician's spell is about to be completed. Those with broken iron shields retreat and exchange positions with the uninjured ones. Margaret's voice appeared on the battlefield at the right time, calming the soldiers' commotion quickly. The wounded and the dead were pulled away by the people behind them, and the sword and shield soldiers in the back were replaced in the front. Although he knew from the beginning that these crossbows were powerful, Lester was still shocked by the scene in front of him. If the crossbows of this group of rats were enough, without magic, no matter how many people he had, he could not stop them. This was the fundamental gap in equipment. I just don't know how the group of red-skinned rats got such terrible crossbows and crossbows. Ancient ruins, or self-development, or some special minerals. Maybe he would know the answer after he completely defeated this group of underground rats. Water Ripple Barrier. The Black Rose Mage finished casting the spell, and a light blue spherical magic shield appeared in front of the sword and shield soldiers. Shadow Crossbowman, listen up. Shoot. Although he had no vision inside the mine, Apsa still decided to order an attack. He knew that passively taking a beating would quickly reduce the morale of the soldiers. Dozens of crossbow arrows flew into it. Under the counterattack of the shadow crossbowman, many painful squeaks came from the cave, which made many soldiers look much better. Then, as if enraged, the second wave of red arrows shot from the cave. In the horrified eyes of the mage, they easily penetrated the water ripple barrier and took the lives of more than a dozen soldiers. Lord Lester. These crossbow arrows have the property of breaking magic. The magic barrier doesn't work. A mage yelled at Lester. Lester's face remained unchanged, but his expression became more solemn. He still had no experience, and at this point, He couldn't think about the mine anymore. Release offensive magic with all your strength. The mages who were preparing other defensive spells stopped the unfinished magic spells in their hands and switched to offensive spells. After the second wave of counterattacks by the shadow crossbowmen, a variety of offensive magics flew into the cave. Lightning, fireballs, or small ice spikes and stones with a chilling air slightly illuminated the mine under the dim light of magic. Dozens of red-skinned rats standing in disorder, holding crossbows, saw that things were not going well, and screamed and fled to the tunnels on both sides. In the end, only a dozen rats that could not escape in time were hit by magic, and fell to the ground under the attack of magic element. Continue to attack. Lester gave the order. The mages hesitated for a moment. Although the results were not satisfactory, they still cast spells again, consuming their own magic power. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Under the suppression attacks of magic and crossbow arrows, the mine began to become noisy and manic. With the red arrows flying out again, the rat infantry like a red tide rushed towards the mine entrance waving the daggers in their hands, staring with ferocious red eyes, and pounced on the sword and shield men in the front row. Thanks to M_U for the monthly ticket support. Thanks to for the reward. Thanks to everyone for the recommendation votes. Please invest, promote, and collect. Hangai promises here that if this book can reach 5,000 copies before it is put on the shelves, it will, possibly, reach the minimum goal of 500 average orders. If the average order goal is successfully reached within a week after it is put on the shelves, I will start to add more chapters in the second week. 500 average orders will be 10,000 a day. 1,000 average orders will be 10,000 a day in 2 days. Any higher is a dream. Hangai dare not dream. Being able to reach 1,000 average orders is beyond imagination. It is the kind that can make you wake up with a smile in your dreams. If the standard cannot be met, then this book will be written slowly at the established slow pace, with 2 chapters a day, only for the rewards and additions from readers, who are the helmsmen and above. Due to work reasons, I cannot send out all the manuscripts in stock, so as to avoid encountering emergencies, and being unable to type. Thank you all for your support and understanding. I hope that everyone will be merciful when discussing the plot, and not make personal attacks, as that would make you seem very uncultured. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 A Pitiful Victory. Alice tightly held the wooden iron-headed gun in her hand, staring at the countless pairs of evil red eyes in the darkness without blinking. The scene in front of her reminded her of the nocturnal wolves she encountered in the Goral Mountains when she was a child. The difference was that the eyes of those wolves were green, cunning and cruel, while the eyes of these big rats in front of her were red, with a bit of bloodthirstiness and violence on top of cunning. Alice, never expose your back to wild beasts. Use your courage, wisdom and ignited fire to drive them away. This is what her father, who was holding a scimitar and guarding the fire and fighting against the wolves, said to her. The weapon in her hand was much more terrifying than the short scimitar in her father's hand. Her father's short scimitar was made for hunting and skinning, while her long spear was born for killing. The half-human Hierat soldiers finally faced the attack magic that fell from the sky and rushed into the front row of sword and shield soldiers. Hold your shield. The captain's cold voice came from my ear. Sweet put up a half-body square iron shield more than 1 meter long, thrust his waist, and slammed into the rat who was swinging his knife. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The red short knife chopped on the big iron shield, leaving only a shallow mark, and the owner of the short knife was knocked to the ground by the impact of the iron shield, revealing his soft belly without the protection of red scales. Draw your gun. A familiar command came from the sky. Alice's eyes fixed, holding the gun with both hands, and stabbing hard at the rat's belly. It was like piercing a skinned pheasant filled with water. After a bunch of colorful organs flowed out, the rat in front of him stopped struggling and took his last breath. A red-headed crossbow arrow flew over with a swoosh, and Sweet put up the iron shield again, reminding the girl without looking back. Keep your body down. Instinctively squatting down, the crossbow arrow flew past her cheek. Alice felt her right face was a little warm, but there was no time to do anything. She could only hold the spear tightly. The crazy rat soldiers stepped on the corpses of their companions and rushed forward again. Swords clashed, blood flew, cutting feet, legs, and hands. The rat soldiers, who were not tall, focused on the soldiers' lower 3 roots, using every possible means. A rat holding a clay pot threw the clay pot at the sword and shield soldiers in the front row. The clay pot broke on the iron shield and splashed a piece of dark green corrosive liquid. The iron shield made a corrosive sound. The Narcs and soldiers who were touched by the green liquid soon screamed, and their flesh and blood melted like spring snow, revealing piles of white bones. The broken formation soon welcomed more rat soldiers. Fortunately, new sword and shield soldiers stepped up and blocked the rats' offensive. Observing the situation on the battlefield, Lester's expression was a little grim. Although the team successfully gained the advantage of terrain by defending the narrow mine, the casualties remained high. The weapons of this group of underground red-skinned rats were too strange. They looked very simple, but their hardness and sharpness were much higher than steel. Moreover, these rats had many tricks. Now it seemed that there was probably a commander coordinating the actions of the rats. Bone-eating flame. Meredith finally completed the long-prepared black magic. The green cursed bone mud turned into a half-human-sized flame ball with green light. Under the control of the female magician, it slowly flew into the mine and fell silently to the ground. Puff! The green fireball that landed was like a white phosphorus bomb falling from the sky, shooting into the sky and exploding. Hundreds of small green flames quickly shot around and swept towards the rats. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Dozens of rats whose skin was stained by the green flames wailed in pain. The instinct to escape was aroused, and the rats fled aimlessly in all directions. Soon, they brought the green flames that burned their flesh to their companions, causing a new round of burning. The green flames spread rapidly like a plague virus, and the rats' offensive was instantly defeated. Some rats whose bodies were ignited wanted to rush out of the cave and pounce on the soldiers of the Black Iron Guard, but were instantly killed by the shadow crossbowmen. Squeak. An extremely sharp cry sounded from the cave, and the chaotic footsteps quickly faded away. Only the rats whose bones had not been burned through were still screaming in pain, and soon they lost their voices. Seeing such a terrible enemy being easily defeated by the strange green flames, many soldiers had a little more awe of the Black Rose Mage in black robes. Lester frowned. Reality is different from games after all. In this world, powerful wizards obviously don't have only 4 skills, just like Meredith doesn't only have bone erosion flame. With a new understanding of the terrible power of magic, Lester's heart became more gloomy. The power of the extraordinary is too strong, which is not a good thing for most ordinary people and himself. However, now is not the time to think about this. Seeing that the green flames in the mine were about to dissipate completely, Lester said coldly, "Avoid the burning green flames. Quickly collect all the items dropped by the rats. The complete corpses must also be moved out, and the range is limited to the mine entrance. The rest of the wizards prepare rock magic and quickly close the mine after the soldiers come out." The soldiers holding torches moved quickly. For fear that the rats would return, the soldiers had a clear division of labor and quickly moved the spoils dropped by the rats, piling up a large pile outside the mine, including corpses, rotten animal skins, rat stone sculptures, bone ornaments, notched short knives, red-headed crossbows, strangely shaped crossbows, and even more than a dozen dark red stones. After all the soldiers came out, the Black Rose Mages cast spells at the same time, using rock magic to quickly seal the mine. In order to prevent the rats from digging the rocks, Lester also ordered the mages to set up several magic guards in the mine, which could monitor the mine before the magic power disappeared. After everything was done, the calm soldiers looked at their comrades who were always sleeping beside them, bowed their heads and said nothing. Just guarding the entrance of the mine, which was easy to defend, but difficult to attack. More than 50 people died in the Emerald Territory, not counting the wounded, which was close to a quarter of the total number of Narcs and Black Iron Guards. The loss was heavy. The enemy this time was much more terrible than expected. They are Narcsans. They died with honor on the battlefield. They used their lives to buy us precious time and give us the opportunity to understand what kind of monsters these rats that came out of the ground are. Lester's voice was very calm. He pointed to the dead rats and trophies piled on the ground. This group of rats is organized, disciplined, thoughtful, and knows how to forge. They may have their own culture. There is no doubt that they are an army, and they exist just like us. Treating them as rats is the greatest disrespect to the dead warriors. They are warriors just like us, warriors who want to exterminate us. The highest respect we can give to the rat warriors is to use the most brutal war to completely exterminate them, leaving no one alive. After a pause, Lester said coldly, "The war of genocide between us and the rats has just begun." Chapter 50 The Meaning of Demacia. East of the Demacia settlement, Jangle Village. A cart slowly stopped at the entrance of the warehouse. The horse shook its tail and snorted loudly. The driver patted its head, and the horse seemed a little happy. A dozen Demacia villagers hurried to the cart. After a brief exchange with the driver, they first took a small wooden barrel filled with magic forbidden wood powder from the cart and walked into the warehouse. Then they walked out of the warehouse in groups of 3 or 5 and laboriously moved out white magic forbidden stones that had solidified into bricks. 3 square bricks of magic forbidden stone were loaded onto the cart and fixed with ropes. After checking and finding no problems, the driver shouted, waved his whip, and slowly ran in the direction they came from. There are more than a dozen such carts in Demacia. Like beating blood vessels, they transport magic forbidden stone bricks to the settlement all the time. Outside a cozy wooden house in a Demacia settlement, a young couple was bending over to clean up the dishes and rinsing wooden bowls with well water. Dale, the new magic forbidden bricks have arrived. We've been waiting for you. Come on. On the other side of the village, a man with a smile on his face waved his hand. Dale, go ahead, leave this to me. The wife smiled at her man and snatched the half-washed wooden bowl from his hand. I clearly agreed to accompany you today. Then I'll leave the house to you when I go. Dale nodded nonchalantly, stood up, and walked towards the man in the distance. Ruth, I agreed not to work today. I want to accompany my wife. Dale's face was a little unchanging. Ruth put his arm around Dale's shoulders and smiled brightly. Today's work is not much. There are only 13 magic forbidden bricks to be laid. If you finish quickly, you can go back earlier. Don't worry, there will be compensation for your work today. 2 fresh fish. This is what the foreman promised you. I'm so jealous. Isn't it because the foreman's requirements are too high? You can obviously lay it, but you insist on letting me do it. I would rather not have those 2 fresh fish. It's because of your good craftsmanship, Dale. Don't be angry. Don't be angry. I have 2 fresh apples at home. I will send them to you after the work is done. Approaching the Demacia East wall that had just started, Dale felt more and more depressed in his chest. He felt that the mana in his body was frozen by ice and could no longer be used, let alone using mana to chant spells. Looking down, Dale felt a little ironic. A mage actually had to deal with magic forbidden bricks that sealed his magic every day and became an ordinary bricklayer. Is there anything more ridiculous than this? Yes, what's more ridiculous than this is that this is not a joke, but reality. Hey, Ruth, you finally got Dale here. The foreman patted the 13 magic forbidden bricks unloaded from the carriage next to him and smiled at the 2 of them. Let's finish it early today so that everyone can go home early. Mix lime, clay, and fine sand in a certain proportion and mix them with water to make cement for wall construction. The builders used buckets and hanging rods to transport the cement buckets to the top of the brick wall with ropes and pulleys. After Dale laid the cement, the stronger brick bearers placed the magic forbidden bricks on their backs on the cement that had not yet solidified, scraping off the excess cement squeezed out by gravity. Dale constantly adjusted the angle of the magic forbidden bricks to ensure that the magic forbidden bricks remained parallel to the stone bricks at the base, and then 1 brick was considered to be laid. It is easy to paste the wall with mud, but it is difficult to place the magic forbidden bricks. The difficulty lies in the fact that it is difficult for others to make the bricks completely horizontal, and Dale himself has a good perception and judgment of geometric figures because he has studied magic arrays, so he can only become a bricklayer. Under the forbidden magic wall, looking at Dale and the others who were building the wall and transporting bricks, Jarvan Dark's eyes were a little complicated. Magic is really a terrible and useful thing. How to apply this terrible and useful thing depends entirely on the mage himself. but most people now don't think so. Bunalis glanced around and whispered to Javan, Patriarch, it has been confirmed that the bricklayer named Dale is a mage. This is what his wife crassly said in person yesterday. It was also confirmed by the forbidden magic. Should we expel him? Turning his head, Javan Dark gently shook his head at his reliable staff. Bunalis, let me ask you, what is Dale doing? Looking at the sweaty man on the wall, Bunalis hesitated and said, he is building a wall. He is building the forbidden magic stone wall. He forged the shackles that bound himself in pain. He did not resist. He even did not know that his wife Clarice had reported him. Javan Dark looked at Dale again. He is willing to obey the rules of Demacia and become a part of Demacia. That is enough. It has nothing to do with whether he is a mage or not. The purpose of building the forbidden magic stone wall is to ban the terrible magic in Demacia, so that magic can no longer be a violent tool for those high-ranking mages to oppress ordinary people. It is also to avoid the terrible magic runes. In Demacia, everyone is immortal. There is no high-ranking mage. This is the true meaning of the forbidden magic stone wall. Javan Dark paused and continued. Do you understand? We didn't build the forbidden stone wall to ban magicians. We built it for fairness and order. Because everyone's talents are different. A wizard's talent is destined to be a wizard, and a mortal's talent is destined to be a mortal. Talent is something that the forbidden stone wall cannot change. We cannot judge others by blood and talent. Otherwise, what is the difference between us and those high and mighty wizards? Can you guarantee that there will be no one with wizard blood among our descendants? I understand, Lord Javan. Bunalis lowered his head and apologized for his superficial understanding. I misinterpreted what you and Lord Doran meant. I didn't really understand the true meaning of Demacia. I should be ashamed of this. You don't need to be ashamed of this, Bunalis. Arbitrariness is a bad habit that most people have. The problem now is that I'm afraid there are many people like you who have considerable misunderstandings and hostility towards mages, judging others based on their identity and bloodline, rather than their evil deeds. It's like what the blue-skinned Yodelman Pochi said, that the villagers of Demacia are excluding foreigners and refugees. Javan Dark's voice was filled with worry. Then, Bunalis, how can we change this situation? After hesitating for a while, Bunalis couldn't help but correct Javan Dark's small mistake. My lord, that purple-skinned yodel is called Poppy, not Pochi. Javan Dark, no matter what, it's always true that all yodels have blue skin. Author's words, free word count, too many to write below. This is a special chapter for Cold Winter Wind. By the way, I would like to explain to all readers why there are only 2 chapters a day now, and the number of words is only more than 2,000. Every new book has a new book period. It is a new book period before it has about 200,000 to 250,000 words. The book will be put on the shelves as soon as the predetermined word count is reached. At that time, the performance of the book will depend on the average rating and the performance of the follow-up readers. If the performance is not good, there is no need to consider recommending it. The only way is to rely on time to slowly increase subscriptions and collections. This will seriously undermine the author's enthusiasm and motivation for creation, and will also affect the performance of the book. Therefore, some books have no follow-up readers, and no recommendation votes. They were originally quite good, but they were gone after being cultivated. This is the main reason. The gap between the performance and expectations is too large, and the average rating and follow-up readers are too low, so it just crashed to death. 1491-05-2014-1425. So I can only rely on various recommendations during the new book period to increase the number of collections. I just want the new book period to be as long as possible, to have more recommendations, and to increase the number of collections. After the book is put on the shelves, I will definitely update as much as possible to extort votes and rewards from everyone. You can look at my contemporaries, a large number of authors who write about the Battle of the Two Cities or Lolly Sports, not to mention whether they are the works of the studio. Just talking about the collections, it is really easy to reach 3,000, while I'm still slowly grinding at 1,500. If I get recommended, the increase is less than 100 a day, and if I don't get promoted, I'm afraid it will be difficult to get 50 a day. If this goes on, I will update more, and once the word count is reached, and the new book period is over, the collection will be less than 3,000. With a subscription ratio of 1%, the average subscription may be less than 30, and then there will be no recommendations, and the collection will not increase. Unless you search Narcissus, no one can find this book. In this case, this book can only maintain 2 updates a day, and write for a year and a half to increase collections and subscriptions. Maybe I can make a comeback later, but it will take too long, and this is not the result everyone wants. I also want to update more often, but now updating more means shortening the life of the book, and lowering its performance, which is not worth it. I sincerely hope that everyone can understand. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.